let's actually go... Let's go up here and see if we can't find a brand new... Let's go to the table of contents. Let's go to... I'll go to the homepage for this website. This is an interesting website, and we're going to be using it today because I am angry. I am furious. Okay. We're going to play in Winamp. I'm going to put this up to, like, loud enough so you guys can hear it. Okay, so... So, this is one of my personal favorite websites that I use for the idea of moral theory. Now, the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy is, again, an organization of scholars from around the world in philosophy and related disciplines to create and maintain an up-to-date reference work. Blah, blah, blah. That's a lot of words to pretty much say it's got information about philosophy and the related disciples. Don't worry about that. The quote is because I didn't want to call out what kind of friend you were. Huh? Eh? Eh? This is my elbow aggressively hitting the corner of my chair. So, we were talking about... We were having a chat in my meme Discord channel about the problem of evil. Now... I read part of this article a little while ago, but I felt like we should go through this and explain why I came to the conclusions I came to, Blade. So, again, I'm not just going to read this out word for word, but the important parts about this are the term God is used in a wide variety of differing meanings. They tend to fall, however, into two main groups. This is pretty much the basic premise of the argument, so it's important that this is made clear. On one hand, there are metaphysical interpretations of the term. God is a prime mover, or a first cause, or a necessary being that has a necessity of itself, or the ground of being, or a being whose essence is identical with his own existence. Or, God is not one being among other beings, even a supremely great being, but instead, being itself, God being reality. Now, the other question is, of course, God's an ultimate reality, which no concepts truly apply. That stuff is kind of hard to argue for or against because it's definition stuff. Yeah, exactly. The other hand, the other interpretations are to connect him to a clear and relative straightforward way with religious attitudes, such as the reason to be worshipped and with a very important human desires. For example, the idea that good will triumph, justice be done, the world is not one where death marks the end of the individual's existence. So, now, there's a few things that come along here. As we went through this, I was trying to... So yeah, this is going to be the thing, is if these are some of the ideas that we focus on the conception of God as an all-powerful, all-knowing, perfectly good being. One concise way of formulating it is as follows. 1. If God exists, then God is omnipotent, omniscient, and morally perfect. 2. If God is omnipotent, then God has the power to eliminate evil. 3. If God is omniscient, God knows when evil exists. 4. If God is morally perfect, then God has the desire to eliminate evil. 5. Evil exists. Now, this is where people can start throwing a wrench into it. Yeah, ontology. Because there's denontology as well, which is a bit different. But yes, ontology and denontology. If evil exists and God exists, then either God doesn't have the power to eliminate evil, or he doesn't know evil exists, or he doesn't have the desire to eliminate evil. Therefore, God doesn't exist, as it's countering our first statement. It's valid as seen by a reducto argument. Now, let me pull up, so people don't know, because this is a complicated thing. So we're going to pull up what is a reductio argument. A reducto argument here. Let me let me pull this up. I don't know if this will show up well on the stream, so it's a bit over to the side. Okay, let me see if I can't adjust the background here. So yeah, reductio ad absurdum here. Here, let me edit this a little bit here. Let's cut off 100 instead. There we go. So, it's a mode of argumentation that seeks to establish a contention by deriving an absurdity from its denial, thus arguing that a thesis must be accepted because its rejection would be untenable. It is a style of reasoning that has been employed throughout the history of mathematics and philosophy from classical antiquity onwards. This is to make, I'm doing this stuff so you guys can see where I'm coming from, that fact that I don't get it wrong. So the basic ideas are, something can be argued to be a self-contradiction, which is ad absurdum, as you said. There's a falsehood, which just means it's a lie, which is ad falsum or ad impossible, or an implausibility or anomaly. This is the other ones. An implausibility or anomaly is essentially arguing that just because it happened doesn't mean it's normal. Actually, we can take along a pretty good argument here about a pretty common meme. The meme where it originates that people, on average, eat 7 spiders a night, or whatever. Now that's not true. That's straight up just false. The statistics were wrong. But one of the old memes was that we can't attribute that to be true because Spider George is over in the corner eating a bowl of spiders every single hour of every single night. Which would mean that the average gets applied to everybody. Yeah, Jimmy Spider Eater, skewing the mean. Exactly. So, we have to assume that just because it happens doesn't mean it's normal for everybody or for every state. Exactly. If so, then. If that's true, then. Etc. There's a lot going on, but when you get into the mathematical of it, you're going to get the formula. If P is true, then P is true. Which is, of course. Now, this little T sign that's turned sideways represents an assertability, that it's absolute or conditional. That means you can say this is something. Yeah, tautology. Since P to Q yields thus P, thus Q, the principle can be established as follows. Suppose 1, P is P, or P means P. Then if P means P because of 1, we can assume that P means P, and etc. But whatever. Honestly, we're not going to go too much into this. The math is not really worth going into. There are people who can argue it. I'm not educated enough to get too far into this. But the important part is that a reductio ad absurdum is essentially, as we got along with the problem of evil, this 7th step is because we've just placed 6, 6 cannot be true if 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 are true, right? Well, 6 must be true, if that's the case. If we get to 5, and 2, 3, and 4 are true, and 2, 3, and 4 can only be true if 1 is true, then 6 leads to 7, etc., etc. Now this is, of course, what if God, rather than being characterized in terms of knowledge, power, and goodness, is defined in some metaphysical way? For example, a ground being itself. The answer will depend on whether, having defined God in such a purely metaphysical term, one can go on to argue that such an entity will also possess at least very great power, knowledge, and moral goodness. If so, evil is once again a problem. You're right, 4 is most often argued from a theological defense. However, the other one is that 5 is the argument. Because, as Blade was saying, evil existing, think about it from our point of view, we can only observe so much. A human being can only see what occurs and then the consequences of that occurrence. So, an event happens, consequences of that event occur. Potentially, there are consequences we don't know about. Again, yeah, theologically, 4, if God is morally perfect, then God desired to eliminate all evil. That is the strongest argument you take away from. I wouldn't say logical fallacy, Blade. This assumption is coming across from the idea of morally perfect requiring any morally perfect being to have the desire to eliminate evil, rather than God himself, or themself, whatever you want to say. Now again, so we're going to come into the idea of an incompatibility formulation versus an inductive formulation. The argument from evil, which is this basic concept, focuses on the fact that the world appears to contain states of affairs that are bad, that are undesirable, or that should have been prevented by any being that could have done so. Exactly, Smith. Now, it then asks the concept of an existence of such affairs to be squared with the existence of God. So, for example, because bad things exist, and we can say that God would want to make bad things not exist. Here, I'm going to move the chat box over to up here. Yes. The moral assumption is that a morally perfect being would desire blah, 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 blah. Okay, so we're going to come back to that, Blade. We are going to come back to that here. Yes, you're right. Moral. You know what? I'm going to pull that page up just so I've got it up so we can go over moral absolutism, because that's a good point, Quizlet. Moral absolutism. I'll pull up both moral realism and moral relativism so we can go through those. Okay, so let's go through this, Blade. We'll go through it together so you can see. Okay, well, before we go any further, I gotta shout out my good friend, or I hope friend. I wish to be Toshino's friend. I don't know if I'm worthy of the honor. Toshinori Akira. Welcome, Raiders. Da-da-da-da-da. Oh no, I spelled that wrong. S-O. Toshinori Akira. What did I spell last time? What did I spell wrong last time? Am I having a stroke? No, it's good. Okay, you're okay. I don't know. Alright, welcome everybody. Stances are tough, the Smith. I'm not really taking a stance, although I do feel like I probably should take a stance. Also, I'm gonna have to cut part of my chat box down, because I'll just make my model a little bit smaller here. That'll help, so I don't cover up as much of the text. There we go. Perfect. Okay. Yes. So, again, we're coming back to our incompatibility formulations versus inductive formulations. Yes, we are talking about evil. Take the stance that there's such moral absolutism. All morals view to protect the current social morals. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so let's follow along this line, because this article addresses it in a very cool way. Just for anybody who wants to know, let's open this up, because this is the author of this one was Thule Michael. This was printed out in 2019, was the final edit of it. And this was, but it was first published in fall of 2015. So, this article is really cool. Let's go back down. Kant versus Nietzsche, round 2. Okay, so let's go down here. Feel free to take Smith. Feel free to chime in with these, because these are all pretty varied. But let's go back to here. Now, this is the argument that there is bad things, and we should, or something should have prevented those things if it could have. Now, the end goal of this is the ambitious form of this sort of argument is attempting to establish the claim that it's logically impossible for it to be the case that both there is any evil whatsoever and that God exists. Now, the argument set out in the preceding section is the argument. Alternatively, rather than being formulated as a deductive argument from the very strong claim it's logically impossible for both God and evil, or for both gods in certain types, certain instances, or certain amounts of evil, the argument from evil can be formulated as an evidential, or inductive, probabilistic argument for the more modest claim that there are evils that actually exist in the world that make it unlikely, or perhaps very unlikely, for God to exist. that's what we're going to come across, actually, here, the Smith, is we're going to get to the point where we come across to what is evil. Now, any version of the argument from evil claims that there is some fact concerning the evil in the world, such as the existence of God, understood as at least very powerful, very knowledgeable, and morally very good, and is ideally an omnipotent, omniscient, and morally perfect person, is either logically precluded or rendered unlikely by that fact. Versions of the argument often differ significantly with respect to what the relevant fact is. Sometimes, as in premise 5 of the arguments that are above, so that's up here, that God evil exists, the appeal is to the mere existence of any evil, whatever. Sometimes, on the other hand, it is the existence of a certain amount of evil, and sometimes the existence of evils of a certain specified sort. Now, again, so whether we would want to remove evil at all is something that's going to get addressed here. So we're going to read through this a little bit so we can get to there. To formulate the argument from evil in terms of the mere existence of any evil at all is to abstract the greatest extent possible from detailed information of all evils, quote-unquote, that are found in the world. And so one is assuming, in effect, that such information cannot be crucial for the argument. I gotta move the chat box so you can see the names. You're right. It might be a pretty dumb argument, but I think it comes across some really cool points that we're going to get to in a second. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Four, one might not feel that, well, the world would be better off without the vast majority of evils. Is this absolute for all evils? Thus, some would argue, for example, the frustration one experiences in trying to solve a difficult problem is outweighed by the satisfaction of having solved the problem. Therefore, the world's a better place because it contains such evils. Alternatively, some argue the world's a better place people develop desirable traits of character, such as patience, courage, by struggling against obstacles, including suffering. But if either of these things is the case, then the prevention of all evil might make the world a worse place. It seems possible, then, there are evils that are logically necessary for goods that outweigh them. And a possibility provides a reason, accordingly, for questioning one of the premises in the arguments I said earlier, like we're talking about, premise 4, where it's claimed that if God is morally perfect, he has a desire to eliminate all evil. There's another reason this claim is problematic, which arises out of a particular conception of free will, namely a libertarian conception. According to the view of free will in that case, in contrast with what are known as... I'm not going to explain compatibilist approaches. Free will is incompatible with determinism. It's free will. Free will does not work out with the idea that God has dictated all of our paths for us, and a truly omnipotent being has made that choice for us. For example, the argument that God chose for Adam and Eve to eat the apple. That's the argument they're trying to argue here. That free will and determinism don't mesh. It is impossible for an omnipotent being to make the case that someone freely chooses to do what's right. Some people, however, claim the world's a better place if it contains individuals who contain absolute free will, rather than individuals who are free only in a sense that it's compatible with one's actions being completely determined. If this claim can be made plausible, we can argue that God would have a good reason for creating individuals who possessed libertarian free will. But secondly, that if he did choose to create this world, even he could ensure that no one would ever choose to do something morally wrong. The good of libertarian free will requires, in short, the possibility of moral evil. For example, if God chose to make a world where everyone had free will, but it was also impossible to do evil, then it wouldn't really be free will. Neither of the lines of arguments are immune from challenge. Both of them can be argued that where some evil is logically necessary for a greater good that outweighs the evil are not really, upon close examination, convincing. So, like, for example, argument that God wanted you to starve as a child so that in the future you would feel bad about other people starving and donate more to food banks. Right? That's a pretty weird argument to make. You can make it for certain, but you can examine it and be like, hold on, why? It doesn't really make sense. I'm gonna skip a couple of these paragraphs because really they're not like going. They're just retreading stuff we've talked about. Here we go. A slightly less abstract formulation of the argument from evil is based upon the premise that the world contains a certain amount of evil, or upon the premise that the world contains some natural evil. Then one is introducing marginally more information. One is still assuming, in effect, that most of the detailed information about the evils found in the world is completely irrelevant to the argument from evil, and very little reflection brings about how very implausible this assumption is. So, for example, consider a world that contains 1 billion units of natural evil. Is this a good starting point for an argument from evil? The answer is that if either the ontological approach to ethics is correct, or a form of consequentialism that takes distribution of goods and evils into account, rather than simply say the total amounts of good and evil. Whether this... Okay, so I'm going to explain that before we go any further. That's what we're getting to, Sirius, actually. Evil here is... We're trying to determine what is evil. So, let's talk about the distribution of good and evils versus the total amount of good and evils. For example, is it better for everybody to evenly feel 12 units of evil, or is it better for one person to take all billion units of evil? Which would be a better off thing, right? So if the billion units uniformly distributed to trillions of people whose lives are otherwise extremely satisfying and aesthetically happy, it's not easy to see a serious problem of evil, for example. Like, that's the case. But if, on the other hand, 1 billion units of natural evil fell upon a single innocent person and produced a life that was, throughout, one of extraordinarily intense pain, then surely there would be a problem of evil. Now, details concerning things, such as how suffering and other evils distribute to an individual, and the nature of those who undergo the evils, are now, in our argument, of crucial importance. It's relevant, for example, that many innocent children suffer agonizing death. It is relevant that animals suffer, and they did so before there were any persons to observe their suffering and to feel sympathy for them. It's also relevant, on the one hand, that the suffering that people undergo apparently bears no relation to the moral quality of their lives. For example, evil people don't feel more evil and good people don't feel less. On the other hand, it bears a very clear relation to the wealth and medical knowledge of the societies in which they live. The prospects for a successful abstract version of the argument of evil would therefore be rather problematic. It is conceivable, of course, that the correct moral principles entail that there cannot be any evils whose actuality or possibility makes for a better world. But to attempt to set out a version of the argument for evil that requires a defense of this thesis is certainly to swim upstream, meaning it's harder to argue that some evils are necessary. It's just harder to do that as a whole. Especially when we're trying to face the problem of these evils occurring with an omnipotent, omniscient, and morally perfect person watching over them. Given that we've pretty much only gone through obvious observations. Okay, Smith, what's up? The Bible does... Yeah, exactly, Quizbit. Yes. The idea that this argument is... Again, we'll go up to the very top to read the argument again. If God exists, then God is omnipotent, omniscient, and morally perfect. If God is omnipotent, then he has the power to eliminate whatever evil he wants. If he is omniscient, he knows all evils. If he is morally perfect, then he has a desire to eliminate all, or in these cases of these arguments, at least some of the evils. 5, those evils still exist. Thus, if the evils exist, and God exists, then either he doesn't have the power to eliminate them, or he doesn't know about them, or he doesn't have the desire to eliminate them. You're right. In Batman versus Superman, Jesse Eisenberg. So that's our core argument. Again, yeah, you can still be good and still do some evil. Alright? This argument here... Okay, where did I skip? I went past a lot of this stuff. Okay, yeah, we were talking about Plantinga. Okay. Now, Alvin Plantinga, discussion of the problem of evil in Gods and Their Minds and Nature of Necessity, and God, Freedom, and Evil. Starting out from examination of John L. Mackey's essay, Evil and Omnipotence, which came out in 1955, which Mackey had defended an incompatibility version of the argument from evil. It focused mainly on the question of whether the existence of God is compatible with the existence of evil. Although there are short discussions of whether the existence of God with a given quantity of evil, or whether the existence of a certain amount of evil renders the existence of God unlikely, the later topic is the focus of this tension in a longer argument, the probabilistic argument of evil, which is a bit different. Yes, that is the case. You're right. So we can talk about that in a little bit, but I want to get through a bit more of this article, and we can move on and we can reference back to it in a bit, but I want to get through here. So here we go. Axiological versus deontological formulations. So, before we go any further, let's look up what these concepts are. So everybody's on the same page. Axiological. And deontological. So, axiology and deontological ethics. Here, I'll actually add this Stanford one to the list. Oops. Let me add that in here. So let's go over some of these concepts here. This post a story trailer for SMT5. Yeah. Hold up. You should separate physical pain with the concept. Yes. Yeah. Again, what Quizbed is saying. The concept of harm, although pain is bad to experience, the concept of harm is more attacking the idea of wellness, and like overall good of the person. But yeah, it's a matter of intent as well. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna put these into the list here. So I'm gonna go through them. I know my article thing doesn't. Actually, this will be fine. Okay, so axiology comes from the Greek word of value, worth, and then the study of. It's the philosophical study of value. It includes the questions about the nature and classification of values and what kind of things have value. So, an axiological definition of something is saying some things have value and some things have less value or more value, etc. So, axiological ethics, we'll go through here. We need to stock of Liberty. You're right. It does. It straight up does. SMT5 will likely be important to know about these things I'm talking about when you play the game. So, axiological ethics is concerned with the values which we hold our ethics standards and theories up to. For example, to base such values, the doing so explores blah 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 blah. Axiology is understood the philosophical study goodness or value. It's concerned with the two main areas of question. The first is in regards to defining and exploring the understandings of the good. And what they have value. Blah, 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 blah. So, I'll read this objective. This is probably the important part that'll get it across easiest. Axiological ethics can be understood as the application of axiology onto the study of ethics. It is concerned with questioning the moral grounds with which we base our judgments on. This is done through questioning the values which ethical principles are grounded on. Once there is recognition and understanding of the underlying values hidden within ethical claims, they can be assessed and critiqued. Through breaking ethics down to an examination of values, rather than the good, morality can be reconstructed based on redefined values or confirmed already set values. Whereas we've got deontological ethics. Again, Kantism is the biggest example of this. I'm going to imagine most people have probably heard the name Immanuel Kant in a meme somewhere at the very least. But his argument was, first, argues in order to act in the morally right way, people must act from duty rather than from seeking your own pleasure. So, it's the normative ethical theory that the morality of an action should be based on whether the action itself is right or wrong under a series of rules, rather than based on what happens after the action occurs. For example, this is a very strange take on it. Like, I'm potentially going out of left field with this, but I wish to help this person, and then I take an action to do it. Because my action is entirely based on my desire to help, the action is good. Even if my desire to help involves, I don't know, making them high on heroin and strapping them to a bed for the rest of their natural lives, making them ensure that they're nothing but happy as they slowly wither away. The outcome of that is this person dying horribly. Yeah, stealing bread to feed my family, rather than the thing, like, you could argue both for the good and the bad parts, right? Like, I could be trying to help but hurting, or trying to help and harming, right? Like, either way. So that's the basic idea we're going to with the problem of evil. Yeah, right. The VTubers who record, the YouTubers who, like, record themselves giving a poor person a sandwich, rather than just giving a poor person a sandwich. Their meaning was not because they wanted to give people food. They would have done that. Their meaning was to get the satisfaction of people watching their videos, or even to get the satisfaction of giving somebody's food. Okay, no. I need to stop now, because I'm going to go into a completely different concept of deontological being incompatible with, like, as we talked about, moral relativism or moral realism, or... Yeah, no, I'm not going to go into that. I need to stop. We'll go again. Yeah, right. They did a good thing, but they weren't doing it to do a good thing. Yes. Again, we're not going to go too deep into it, but this is the basic idea. Axiological is figuring out what has value and why. Deontological is say, it is good because it is good. Yeah. Yeah, the argument of altruism cannot exist if an act of charity feels good. But, I actually do want to come back to that quiz bet, because there's a really cool concept of, I don't know if you're familiar with the pillars of, or the foundations of morality, the 5 foundations of morality theory, and then the arguments against said foundations. There are some really cool articles we'll go into later that I think are really fascinating. But for now, we're going to skip on that and keep on going down our argument against evil, or for evil. So, let's go with, consider now the following formulation of the argument against, from evil, which, in contrast to the abstract version earlier, focuses on quite concrete types of evil. Argument 1. There exists a state of affairs in which animals die agonizing deaths in forest fires, or where children undergo lingering, suffering, and eventual death due to cancer, and that A. are intrinsically bad or undesirable, and B. are such that any omnipotent person that has the power to prevent them, without thereby either allowing an equal or greater evil, or preventing an equal or greater good. For example, if you snap your fingers and cure the cancer, you are not giving it to somebody else, or you're not stopping the doctor to cure cancer from curing cancer as a whole, right? Or a god who snaps his fingers and heals the animal means the forest doesn't get the nutrients it needs to succeed. Or, exactly, or who God doesn't view these as evil. He loves the cancer cells just as much as he loves the child. He loves the fire just as much as he loves the fawn, for example. But moving on, we'll get more on that later. This article's pretty well put together. So that's the first argument. There exists a state of affairs in which animals die in forest fires, or children undergo lingering suffering, eventual death due to cancer, that are A. intrinsically bad or undesirable, and B. any omnipotent person has the power to prevent them without thereby causing other bad things. Now, 2. For any state of affairs that is actual, meaning it's actually happening, The existence of that state of affairs is not prevented by anyone. Meaning, if something happens, no one stopped it from happening. Right? Like that makes sense? If there's a fire, nobody stopped the fire. Because we have a fire. The end. Following that, 3, for any state of affairs and any person, if the state of affairs is intrinsically bad, and the person has the power to prevent that state of affairs without thereby either allowing a greater evil or preventing an equal or greater good, but does not do so, then that person is not both omniscient and morally perfect. Here is our argument again. We're arguing about what actually quantifies as evil. Therefore, if we continue these 3, 4, there is no omnipotent, omniscient, morally perfect person. And if God exists and he is omnipotent, omniscient, and morally perfect, then God does not exist. As this stands, this argument is what's called deductively valid. We can go through what's called a proof. Now, here's a bunch of numbers, and by that I mean math. We're not going to go through it because there's a bunch of symbols I don't want to explain. But essentially, if X, then Y, pretty much, is what this amounts to, and this is the math to prove it. So let's keep going. The challenges about these is the vulnerable point of the claim, the last part of the statement, of 1, that an omnipotent and omniscient person could have prevented those state of affairs that are allowing greater evil. An inductive statement will be predominantly introduced, one that moves from what we know about the undesirable state of affairs. Here we go. Yeah, no, exactly. I don't want to go into it. It's too complicated for me to bring up on a extremely casual philosophy stream. So we're not going to do that. So, we have to figure out about, in this undesirable state of affairs in question, to a conclusion about the overall value about things that we know about is important. The things we know are evil and are not evil. But that is also subject to a different sort of criticism. Let's connect to the feature of it that is important but not often commented upon. The fact that, namely, the above argument is formulated by terms of axiological concepts. That is, in terms of the goodness and badness, the undesirability or desirability of states and affairs. Alright, we're getting there. The criticism that arises features in the statement which observes that morally perfect beings have to prevent these state of affairs, because it is morally right to do so because X, Y, and Z. Whatever. The problem is that any axiological formulation of the argument is evil, as it stands, is incomplete in a crucial respect, since that it fails to make explicit of how a failure to bring about a good state of affairs, or a failure to prevent a bad state of affairs, entails that one is acting in a morally wrong way. See? Moreover, the natural way of removing this incompleteness is by appealing to what are in fact controversial ethics claims, such as the claim the right action is the one that maximizes expected value. The results in turn discussion very well become sidetracked on issues that are in fact not really crucial, such as, for example, the question of whether God would be morally blameworthy if he failed to create the best world he could. The alternative to an axiological formulation is a deontological formulation. Here, the idea is that, rather than employing concepts that focus upon the value or disvalue of states and affairs, one instead uses concepts that focus upon the rightness and wrongness of actions, not upon the proprietaries, right-making proprietaries and wrong-making proprietaries, that determine whether an action is one that ought to be performed or ought not to be performed, other things being equal. When that argument is formulated, there is no problematic bridge that needs to be introduced connecting the goodness and badness of affairs with rightness or wrongness of actions. Let's get into that. Now, how do we best formulate this argument? As an incompatibility argument or as an evidential argument? In section 1.1, an incompatibility formulation is a very abstract way of setting out, which, as we understand, is appealing that this vague sense of evil is a problem. And if God is morally perfect, then he has the desire to eliminate it. The problem with the premise is, as we saw and been talking about, it can be argued that some evils are such in their actuality, or at least possibility, that there's logically necessary goods to outweigh them, or that it's not moral to get rid of them, or, again, with moral relativism, you don't need to get rid of them. In section of 1.4, which is up here, we observed a much more concrete, specific example, which rather than appealing to the mere existence of some evil, appealed to specific types of evil. In particular, situations where animals diagnosed in death in forest fires, children undergo blah 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 blah. The thrust of the argument was that, then, first of all, an omniscient and omnipotent being could have prevented the existence of such quote-unquote evils without thereby allowing equal or greater evils or preventing equal or greater goods. And secondly, that any omniscient and morally perfect will prevent the existence of such evils without the previous qualifier. The second of these claims avoids the objections that can be directed against the stronger claim that we've said. Now, again, stronger claim here doesn't mean the argument's better. It just means it is a more direct, rational, if A then B, if B then C. If A and B and C, thus D. For example. For any reason, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Now, consider in particular the relevant premise in the more concrete version of the argument from evil, section 1.4, was that there are states of affairs that an omnipotent being could prevent without having our value change. How would we go about establishing in a purely deductive argument against that deer suffering a slow and painful death because of forest fire, or a child undergoing a suffering death of cancer, is not logically necessary, either to achieve a greater good or to avoid a greater evil. If one had the knowledge of totality of morally relevant properties, then it might well be possible to show that there are no greater evils that can be avoided, or there are no greater goods that could be done. We do not have such knowledge, although some moral theorists claim we do, and it's possible to set out a complete correct moral theory. But it's certainly a highly controversial metaethical claim, and because of this, we can't really use this argument. And if we can't use one via deductive argument, it can it not be argued that we'll lead to skepticism we can know what human actions are morally right or wrong? This is where we get to a serious question. You're right. Yes. Right? Exactly. So, actually, I'm going to bring that up because I feel like that would be an interesting topic to talk about first. Perfect. We'll put that later. Let's go over that later. That's actually something that we should talk about. It's cool. I'll keep it open for later and make a bookmark of it. We don't get to it today. Okay. Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, here we go. We're offering an inductive argument in support of the relevant premise, but if that's right, then it can truly be best to get the crucial inductive step out into the open and formulate the argument of evil not as an inductive argument from the very strong claim that it's logically impossible for God and evil to exist, or as an evidential claim to the more modest claim that there are evils that actually exist, that it would make it unlikely that God exists. This is, again, we're moving from this is true to because this is, we can observe this, it is unlikely that the other thing. So here are inductive arguments. If we want to use an evidential formulation, what form could it take? There will appear to be four main possibilities that have been suggested in recent discussions about the topic. The first of which is the direct inductive approach, involves the idea that one can show that theism is unlikely to be true without comparing theism to any alternative hypothesis, other than the mere denial of theism. We can prove that theism is false because we can prove it's false. We don't need to prove that evolution exists. We don't need to prove anything. We just can prove that you're wrong. This was set up by William Rowe. Is the idea that one sound type of reasoning is what we might refer to as an insubstantiatal generalization. We're going to skip that for now. Not really important. Indirect inductive argues that instead that theism can be shown to be unlikely by establishing that there is an alternative hypothesis. We can show that it's more likely for evolution to be true, thus creationism probably isn't true. Right? versus simply just attacking creationism, we propose an alternative. The third approach is William Rowe, again, involves that we might be referred to as the Bayesian approach, which differs from the first two that do not involve either incidental generalization or an inference the best explanation. Yeah. So the idea is to start out from the premises that are themselves substantive, probabilistic claims, and then to show that it follows deductively from those claims, via axioms of probability theory, that it's unlikely that God exists. So essentially, because we know this, and this, it's probably true that this isn't going to happen, or this never happened. The fourth and final is Michael Tooley, is the idea of bringing a substantive theory of inductive logic, or logical probability, to bear upon the argument, and then arguing that when it's done, we can derive a formula for giving the probability, so we can straight up find P God existence here, which is ridiculous, but it's whatever it is. So, a concrete, deontological, and directive inductive formulation. The basic idea that a direct inductive formulation of the argument of evils, the argument involves a crucial step that takes the form of an inductive projection or generalization in which one moves from the premise concerning the known moral properties of some state of affairs to the conclusion of the overall moral worth of that state of affairs, given all its moral properties, both known and unknown. For example, there are events in our worrying, such as an animal dying in agonies of forest fire, a child undergoing lingering suffering with cancer, such that the actions of allowing these events, when one could have prevented them, both A, have very serious known wrong-making characteristics, and B, have no right-making characteristics of which we are aware that are sufficient to balance out the known wrong-making properties. The other really theological arguments for God that, hey, God is a preposition to the argument. You're right. You're straight up right. It is hilarious. But moving on for our core argument. If that statement is true, it is likely that for any such action, the totality of the wrong-making properties, both known and unknown, outweighs the totality of the right-making properties, both known and unknown. And any action whose wrong-making properties outweigh its right-making properties is morally wrong. This comes back to our demonological. Because it's not going to help anyone, and it's going to harm people, it is wrong to do. Right? It's like you're stealing bread to feed your family. If your family's not hungry, and the person you're stealing from really needs that bread, then it doesn't really make sense to steal the bread to feed your family. Of course, this is those both known and unknown ideas. You're right. Which supposes helping humans is the base goal of morality. Again, that's, again, like you said, we're going to have to go back to our moralism, moral relativism questions here. What is morality? Here, the argument is that, even about humans, for example, something suffering, whatever it is, an animal suffering, a tree suffering, an ant that you step on suffering, those are where we have to look at our goals for morals. Because again, the question of simply arguing that that thing you said is evil isn't really evil is a completely fair argument. If I go up on the stand and say, abortion is inherently wrong, thus we should never do it. Now, you could try to fight the thus we should never do it part, that's fair, but it's a lot easier just to attack the abortion is morally wrong part, because you can pull out evidence, you can pull out this and that. But again, what is morally wrong or right is our question of, again, the ontological ethics. What is morally right? So, if we're going through our statement here of deontological ethics here, let's go down through this. We'll go through it a little bit. Deontological has the foil, meaning the opposite, is consequentialism. Consequentialism holds the choices and acts or intention to be morally assessed, blah, 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 blah. Some conscientialists are monists about, quote-unquote, the good. Utilitarians, for example, the opposite of... Utilitarianism is a hilarious idea. I love it, but it's also weird. Argue that good is pleasure, happiness, and desire satisfaction, or this funny word, well, moral dadaism. Oh no, don't do that. Don't do that at all. Okay, for those of you who are not aware, let's look up Wikipedia. Let's go to the face page for what Dadaism is. Which is an art movement in the European avant-garde century. So you've probably all seen Dadaist pieces. No, not Daddyism. For example, this pot, this urinal that was tilted over and submitted to an art exhibit. Why? How is this? Or here is an Ultraman character called Dada. Like, it's an art movement about absurdity. Okay, no. I want to make it clear, Smith. As much as I completely disrespect Dadaism in its entirety, it's not a scam. There is scam art out there. For example, the banana being taped to a wall was probably just money laundering. But Dadaism is, as Quizlet said, the rejection of logic, reason, asceticism of modern capitalist society, expressing nonsense, irrationality, and anti-bourgeois protest in your work. That's the origin of it as a development. It's artistic counterculture movement, but back in the 20s, pretty much. It essentially is nonsense that is still art. The idea that I don't have to follow your rules, I'm just going to call it art and you can't prove me wrong. This is because at the time, Futurism, Cubism, Expressionism were very popular and were very, how should I say this? Controlled mediums. Dadaism as a whole was very interesting. In fact, the study of Dadaism is super, super cool. I think it's super interesting how it came about, the people who followed it. That's all actually a fascinating topic of study. But for whatever the case, Dadaism is essentially artistic counterculture. Yeah, the argument of what is art is entirely subjective because the creation of new artistic works, people simply wanted to say art is art. Yes. Yeah. Again, there's a lot of people. Johannes Baader, Hugo Ball, Marcel Duchamp, Max Ernst, Hosman Hartfield, Emmy Hennings, So, a later style of Dadaism that most people are fairly familiar with is Surrealism. Classical begat Romanticism, begat Dadaism. Exactly. So, Surrealism, you're probably all familiar with because it's like the art part of Dadaism. Everybody knows about Salvador Dali. You know, the man, the myth, the legend. Let's see if I can find a piece of art from him that everyone would easily recognize. Well, there's a bunch of sculptures, but like, yeah, here, like this one. Right? The mustache, exactly. Yeah, you saw the picture of the mustache, probably. Yeah, the melting clocks, right? The weirdo. He was not necessarily a Dadaist, but he moved in the same circles that Dadaists did, but... Okay. That non sequitur out of the way. Let's go back to our deontological ethics. That's what we're doing. The concept of what is good. Now, as you can see, these are long articles. Like, there's a lot There's a lot going on. But essentially this is a... Data is a... No! Okay. You're right. Okay, so, you know what? If we're gonna keep getting hung up on the problem of what is evil, we're gonna talk about a couple of concepts. Let me see if I can't find the actual scholarly sources I want. This is a good one, actually. Is this it? No, where I'm looking for it. Yeah, this one. Okay, here we go. Okay. Perfect. Okay, so this can go here. And this can go here. So we're now getting back into the idea of morality. Okay, moral dataism is the Rule 34 of Hobbes. Causing physical pain. Alright, so the moral foundations theory was created by a group of social and cultural psychologists to understand why morality varies so much amongst cultures, yet still shows so many similarities and recurrent themes. In belief, the theory proposes that several innate and universally available psychological systems are the foundations of what are called intuitive ethics. Each culture then constructs virtues, narratives, and institutions atop of these foundations, thereby creating the unique moralities we see around the world and conflicting within nations too. The 5 foundations which are argued for best are, number 1, care harm. The idea related to our long-term evolution with attachment system is an ability to feel and dislike the pain of others. We can look at somebody who is starving and say, it is bad that they are starving. I don't like that. Underlines the virtues of the opposite. Kindness, gentleness, and nurtures. Commonalities are pro-social behavior good. There's actually some really cool stuff going on to this. You're right. This, however, is a little bit different. Moral Foundations has some problems that I want to approach, but it's a good start. Now, fairness and cheating. The foundation is that reciprocal altruism. The summary of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. People who do good things should be rewarded. People who do bad things should be punished. Right? That's the idea. Loyalty and betrayal. Foundations related to our long history as tribal creatures. It underlines patriotism, self-sacrifice for a group, and is active anytime people feel that it's one for all and all for one. The collective group. We're all in this together, like you said. No. This is saying that these are the good things. These are the core 5 that every culture agrees is good. Yeah, care is good. Harm is bad. Fairness is good. Cheating is bad. Loyalty is good. Betrayal is bad. Authority, and this is where, okay, so these last 3, loyalty, authority, and sanctity, are a little bit odd because they don't really play nice with universal goods and evils, but they're a good example. Yes, exactly. Someone deriving pleasure from harm is evil, because even if they're gaining a net positive good, they're causing a net positive bad to others. Now, from that same concept, you could go into the utilitarian idea of, well, as long as there's more good than evil, it's okay. So if you have 1,000 people that love hurting people, and 1,000 people that don't like being hurt, then if those 1,000 people who like to hurt people gain more pleasure than the 1,000 people who don't like being hurt lose in pain, you should still let the people hurt them, because it's net good. Right, exactly. What if the joy is better than the harm? What if I gain 1,000 units of happiness from stabbing somebody, and then everybody in the world, and then the guy loses 50 and all his friends lose 5? Hypothetically, you should let me stab the dude, because I'm gaining 1,000, but that's, to our next level, not fair. That's not fair to the dude. He shouldn't lose anything just because I want to gain something. Right? So that's going to go with vengeance versus justice, right? We shouldn't cause pain simply because we want to, because somebody hurt us, but because it's fair to do so. Authority and subversion is founded based on the idea of someone should be a leader, and if they are the leader, you should listen to them, even if they don't have your best interests at heart. That's a little hard one to think about, but for example, is because everybody voted for Donald Trump to be president, we should support his presidential actions. Right? That is an appeal to authority. An appeal that because he is authority right now... Yeah, exactly. The idea of one person bringing pain brings more people joy. Or fairness unfair to deny me pleasure. Now that's the thing, is if someone only feels pleasure from hurting other people, and there is no possible way for them to feel pleasure aside from that, then you're right. In a truly utilitarian idea of morality, it's okay for them to hurt people. However, when we're looking at the idea of care and harm, in general, these ideas actually don't care about you as a person. They don't care about you at all. They care about how you feel about certain things happening to others and people around you. The care harm doesn't actually care about your own care or harm. Yeah, no, exactly. There's lots of things, like the Charlie Brown, the Black Mirror. There's a lot of really cool ideas. And yes, you're right, Quiz, but number 4 is societies teach people not to question the people leading society. I wonder why. No, that's entirely fair. There's actually a really cool breakdown on this, talking about... I'll describe the next one. The foundation was shaped by the psychologically of disgust and contamination. Sanctity is purity. Don't touch bad things. Don't eat bad things. Don't do bad things because they're bad for you. Why are they bad for you? Because. Right? This has come into modern parlance recently as people are really worried about the idea of organic food being consumed. Oh, I can't have that. It was made with pesticides or it was made with GMOs. Why is that bad? I don't know. Because. Right? So these aren't great. These are really cool and great to explain, again, like Quizlet's saying, how a society essentially attempts to educate the people inside to form their moral opinions. These 5 things are what societies build themselves up to build. Now, our next thing here is mapping a morality of the compass, testing theory of this concept. Morality is cooperation, which is a very cool idea. I love this idea. With a new questionnaire. It's by Oliver Scott Curry, Matthew Jones Chester, and Casper Van Lisa. Their series of practices such as harm and kosher stem. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, like that's really exactly it. Like, again, we can go to the Bible. We can look at you shouldn't eat shellfish because it's really hard. It's really easy to get food poisoning. Or you shouldn't shave because you might cut yourself and get infected. Or whatever reasons, right? Like a lot of these religious rules, like you're saying, are for the good of the people, not necessarily because God doesn't want you to eat shellfish, right? Yeah, head coverings as an environment, so you don't yeah, exactly, right? So the morality is a cooperation theory. This is your abstract here. Is the theory that morality is a collection of biological and cultural solutions to the problems of cooperation recurrent in human social life. MAC uses game theory primarily to identify distinct types of cooperation and predicts that each will be considered morally relevant and each will give rise to new, distinct moral domains. You're right. Why do people need religion? Because it helps. Like, again, I think that, in general, those religious rules, for the most part, were there to help people. very few priests actually put a rule that was just there to hurt people. They thought it would be better for the people if they did X or Y or Z, right? That's where those rules come from. Sure, it got abused by people in power, but any system of rules gets abused by people in power, right? Yeah, exactly. Well, okay. Alright, the Crusades were really great for some people from their point of view in regards to theology. Right? Yeah, King is chosen by God, also he invites me to his parties. Exactly, because later on it became more used, but in the origin of most religions, they were primarily to help the people. They've been misused ever since, again, but it's an easy way to help people because it's an easy way to control people. Having a religion is an easy way to get people to all follow the same rules by A, threatening them if they don't by like eternal damnation or hell or purgatory or whatever, right? And then also to reward them if they do. You never actually have to give them anything if they succeed or punish them if they fail because you just tell them God will do it anyway. Well, kind of. You're right. For example, the switch from Catholicism to Protestantism probably wasn't made to help the people. Straight up. But I'm not saying in every right? I'm not saying every circumstance of religion is good. But I'm saying religion was created with a good idea in mind. Thus, in our deontological idea, we're good. Yeah. So, moving on, I kind of want to talk about this because moral cooperation theory is actually really cool. Morality is cooperation. Is a questionnaire here to essentially ask people about it and emerge as a best available compass to which to explore it, as the MFQs, the Moral Foundation Questionnaire, doesn't really do a good job. So, blah, blah, blah. Our introduction is the question, what is morality? What explains its contents and its structure? How is it best measured? In recent years, the study of morality has become a focus of a thriving, interdisciplinary endeavor, encompassing research not only in psychology, but in evolutionary theory, genetics, biology, animal behavior, anthropology, neuroscience, and economics. Chinese dynasties. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Where did morality come from? Why do we listen to it? What is it? Right? Now, one of the theological ideas is it is good because God said so. Now, that's pretty weird, but it's a pretty good idea. It comes back to our problem of evil, right? Like, God can tell us what is good or evil. He's done so. He wrote a book, apparently. He wrote the Bible. Everybody read the Bible. Tell you what's wrong, what's good, what's bad, what to do, what not to do, etc. Now, this is a really cool idea where it talks about morality is a function to promote cooperation. Yeah, right. If you prove that God tells you what is good, and then because God is good, he is real. Again, it's an Ouroboros. It's a never-ending loop. It's tautology. You just get because X, Y, and because Y, X. Or, to sum it up, X equals X. That doesn't make any sense. So this is a cool idea where, let's look at it. The paper presents two goals. Non-zero sum game theory, which is the idea of a situation in where both parties can cooperate to gain a net advantage, rather than both parties fighting to lose that advantage. Non-zero sum games, blah blah blah. To approach rigorous systematic foundation, the cooperative approach to morality has previously lacked. We show how this rich principled exploratory framework, which we call morality's cooperation, which is from a different study, 2 different studies written by Curry, which are both really interesting, incorporates more types of cooperation and this explains more types of morality than previous approaches. Okay, so we test its prediction that these types of cooperation will be considered morally relevant and will each give rise to a distinct moral domain by developing a new self-report measure of moral values with the facets dedicated to 1. Family values, 2. Group loyalty, 3. Reciprocity, 4. Bravery, 5. Respect, 6. Fairness, and 7. Property rights, and then examine the said psychometric properties. The theory of morality of cooperation argues that it's a rare condition in this day and age. Morality consists of a collection of biological and cultural solutions to the problem of cooperation recurrent in human social life. Below, we will review the general argument before looking at the specific types. Life begins when molecules start making copies of themselves. These replicators are selfish in the technical sense that they promote their own replication. I'm going to open that right now. Dawkins put this forward. They can promote the replication at the expense of other replicators. These competitive interactions have a winner and a loser. One's gain is another's loss. They are zero-sum games. But replicators can also replicate in concert with other replicators. These cooperative interactions have 2 winners. They are win-win situations. They are non-zero-sum games. Essentially, zero-sum games is if I get 1 point, you lose 1 point. Thus, our total points is at 0. Right? That's a zero-sum. Our total points end up being to 0. Nobody's really winning if we're both working together. Air hockey versus the pandemic. Yes, exactly. Natural selection can favor genes for cooperation. That is, genes for evolutionarily stable phenotypic strategies designed to achieve superior equilibria in non-zero-sum interactions, and is done throughout the history of life. Natural selection for genes that employ cooperative strategies have driven several major transitions in the evolution of life on Earth, including the formation of cells, chromosomes, and multicellular organizations. Natural selection has also favored genes for cooperation between individuals in a wide variety of species, including humans. Humans descended from a long line of social primates. They spent 50 million years living in social groups, and 2 million making a living as intensely collaborative hunter-gatherers. This has equipped humans with a range of biological, including psychological, adaptations for cooperation. These adaptations can be seen as natural selection's attempts to solve the problems of cooperation. More recently, improvisational intelligence and cultural transmission have made it possible for humans to attempt to improve upon natural selection solutions by inventing evolutionarily novel solutions, tools, and rules for further bolstering cooperation. Together, these biological and cultural mechanisms provide the motivation for social, cooperative, and altruistic behavior. Exactly. Yeah, it's absolutely bonkers to look at somebody's face and understand what they're feeling. Or see them cross their arms and know that means they're upset. Like, you're right, that's ridiculous to an animal. But again, moving forward. According to MAZ, it's precisely these solutions to the problems of cooperation, these collections of instincts, intuitions, inventions, and institutions that constitute what is human morality. What problems of cooperations do humans face, and how are they solved? Evolutionary biology and game theory tells that there is not just one problem of cooperation, but many, with many different functionally and perhaps phenotypically distinct solutions. Our review of this literature suggests that there are at least 7 well-established types of cooperation. 1. The allocation of resources to kin. 2. Coordination to mutual advantage. 3. Social exchange and conflict resolution through contests featuring 4. Hawkish displays of dominance, and 5. Dovish displays of submission. And 6. Division of disputed resources, and 7. Recognition of possession. We'll explore them a bit below, and each explains. Wrinkles and delicious prions. No, don't do that. Don't eat brains. It's bad. but serious. If we have two forms of morality, one being human, one being overall, how do we observe that overall version through the lens of our human brains and thoughts? Yes, absolutists or realists reject that, where relativistics or absolutists say these kind of things are true, and relativism is like, we gotta think about it a bit more. Kind of. Okay, so let's go over our morality as cooperation compass. Well, that's the thing, is it? Or is it because we comprehend that we have them? Yeah, according to whom, right? Let's go through what morality as a compass says about, as humans, why are we the way we are? So number one label is our family. Our problem is that should we allocate more resources to our family, our sons, our daughters, our sisters, our mothers, than strangers? If I have enough food to feed 5 people, should I feed me and 4 of my family members, or should I feed 5 random people? The idea is that, in general, our solution is that we favor our kin altruism. We like the people that are related to us. And our virtues, because of this, are that we have a duty to care for them, and we have special obligations to help them. The vices, however, with this, is that incest or neglect can happen. Our epithet is that blood is thicker than water. Now, of course, I want to contest that, because blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb is the way that was actually used. But again, that's actually fairly similar, of the idea that the people you make into your family are more important to you than the people who are not your family, which I think is a pretty fair assessment. Now, moving on to the people who are part of your group here, are why should we be in a group? What coordination is there? Is an opportunity here? And our solution is mutualism. I will be loyal to you as long as you are loyal to me. We will work together and conform to be the same so that we can help each other. I will sacrifice some of my personal wants so that we both are on the same level. In our Eve's example, I know that I will gain pleasure if I stab you, and I know you will feel pain if I stab you, and I would enjoy that. But I've got a farm to harvest. I can't just stab you because you already agreed to help me harvest my farm. At least for now, we should work together to harvest whatever my farm produces so that we have that resource. Whereas if I just kill you now, I wouldn't get that pleasure. I will put aside my purpose. Of course, this is hugely elaborate. It can be any type of ideas. For example, everybody around me really doesn't like the gays. I'm gay. I'm gonna pretend not to be gay so that I can fit in with the group. Right? Not necessarily a good thing, but if you're treating it as a moral from cooperation, you should put aside your own personal wants and needs to better sustain the group. You're right. He was an idiot, and his moral compass was informed by utility completely. He was the idea of cut people in half. Okay, the one thing, Blade, to be fair, the point of view of the Thanos snap killing half the people versus doubling the amount of available resources was that people always grow. Right? They will always grow to consume more. So he's like, I'll just stop that. But why didn't he just sterilize them at the same time? Who knows? Why not just make everybody sterile and immortal? Wouldn't that solve the problem? That way nobody's dead. You just can't have any more kids. Who cares? Well, I think his idea is that he was never going to be immortal. I don't think he planned to wear the glove forever. But I don't know, man. He's an idiot. Just kind of explaining his plan for 3 hours. Okay. Moving back to my argument here. Reciprocity, social dilemma. So if there's a problem in social dilemma, like we've got 2 people who want different things, our solution to this is reciprocal altruism. Meaning, if I do good, people will do good to me. And if I see somebody doing bad, we should treat them worse. If we know somebody is a thief, When he goes hungry, we shouldn't just give him food. However, if I know someone donates to the hungry often, and then he starts to go hungry, we should give him food. Right? Mac can use a better move than Justice League. Alright, Justice League was shit. Justice League was so garbage. Alright. Now, the next 4 are a little bit different, because... We'll talk about it as time goes on. We got lots of time. So, heroism here is the idea of conflict resolution. Now, we have 4 products that come from the idea of 2 people wanting the same thing. I want that food. You want that food. How do we get the food? The hawkish displays, and the idea of a game theory, hawk versus dove, is your ability to, yeah, exactly, say, I want it more than you do. I'm brave. I'm stronger. I'm better. I'm going to take it because I want it. Right? If I have 4 hours watching movies, it's going to be Lawrence of Arabia. Just Lawrence of Arabia every time. All right. Deference is the exact opposite. I recognize you are strong. I recognize I cannot win against you, and to fight would just hurt both of us. So I will give you what you need because I don't wish to endanger others by attempting to fight for it. For example, you are a family of farmers, and the king rolls up with soldiers saying, I own this land, you owe me taxes. You can fight the knights, and all your family can die, or you could just give up some of your food so that your family can live. Right? Snyder cut of Endgame? No, don't do that. Don't do that at all. What a mediocre being. What a miserable pile of beings. Alright, fairness, on the other hand, is meeting in the middle, bargaining. Alright, I won't give you all my food, but I'll give you most of it. I just need enough for my family to eat, and then a little bit to sell so we can grow. Right? Whereas the idea of our previous hawkish display of the knight simply showing up and taking all the food, that just kills the farmer. Right? And then the idea, again, of the property is, I own this land, thus my child will have it. Or because I own it, you just can't take it. It's not okay to just take what other people owned. Except, again, if you owe them something for protecting you or being stronger than you, you can take it for free. Welcome back, BPC. Alright, so let's go through these one at a time. Again, kin selection, coordination, social dilemma, blah, blah, blah. So, allocation of resources to kin. Genes that benefit replicas themselves that reside in other individuals, that is, genetic relatives, will be favored by natural selection if the cost of helping is outweighed by the benefit of the recipient genes, as from Dawkins and Hamilton. So, evolutionary theory leads us to expect that under some conditions, organisms will possess adaptations for detecting and delivering benefits, or avoid doing harm, to their kin. This theory of kin selection explains many instances of altruism in many species, including humans. Ha ha ha, you're starting to notice something, Quiz. Yeah, you're picking up on... Exactly. You're right. The in-group versus the out-group. What benefits me and my social group is what the core benefit of this is. But at the same time, these can apply to the groups themselves versus, is it wise for my group to try to attempt to benefit the people inside it, or is it wise for me to cooperate with another group to benefit both groups equally? Or one group more, whatever case. So, the idea that kin value is that people naturally and evolutionarily, yeah, right, want to help their offspring, avoid inbreeding, and is widely regarded as an important component of morality. Right? So, the coordination of mutual advantage is group loyalty. In game theory, situations which individuals are uncertain about how to behave in order to bring about mutual benefits are modeled as coordination problems. Humans and other animals use a variety of strategies, such as focal points, traditions, leadership, signaling, badges of membership, theory of mind, to solve these problems and form stable coalitions and alliances. Morality's cooperation predicts that because solutions to coordination problems realize mutual benefits, they will be regarded as morally good. The theory can explain why participating in collaborative endeavors, favoring your own group, and adopting local conventions have been widely regarded as important components of morality. Thank you, Blade. Congratulations for your 7-month badge. Actually, I think it's a 6-month badge, but whatever. It's a very cute treasure chest that was drawn by the artist, so I like it. Alright. So social exchange reciprocity is social dilemmas, prisoner dilemmas, public goods games, trades, or the tragedies of the commons, for example. I know, right? It does feel like going for 7 months. Yeah, ontology and moral relativism. Although this is more along the lines of... you're right, this is moral relativism, but we're getting there. Arise when the fruits of cooperation are vulnerable to free riders. Yeah, big titty philosophy night, exactly. The tragedy of the commons explains, yes, when people are given everything, they will attempt to gain nothing, because they already have it. Why should I work for food if you're going to give me food anyway? Example, right? So, reciprocity is the idea of conditional cooperation. I will only help you if you agree to help me afterwards, right? Or, I will only help you if you've already helped me. These ideas are solutions to social dilemmas, realize mutual benefits again, and will be regarded as morally good. Morality's cooperation is, if more people are benefiting, it is a good action. Yeah, exactly, right? The tragedy of the commons is just that, right? The people will choose to not benefit or not add to the common pot, and will simply take as much as they are given the right to take. I addressed this in my Lancer setting, because I've got a cool collection of 3 city-states. Nishret I based on the book Leviathan. Was actually, its core idea is that, the priests decided that people can't be trusted to run themselves. Thus, we will argue over, we will give them their duty so that they don't have to worry about not having a task and falling into anarchy. Again, Tiet Arun is, again, like this one. It's essentially a communist society where people have the ability to take how much. Yep, exactly. Hobbes' Leviathan. Where the idea is here, our reciprocal altruism is that everybody who adds to the pot writes their name down in the ledger. The God's ledger, essentially, keeps track of it all, but the guys actually have it. Divination bow? I will later. I read a lot of Destiny 1 lore. Some of the stuff with the worm gods were super cool. I really like those. But I haven't gone back to Destiny 2 lore, just because I've kind of fallen off Destiny 2. Yeah, right? Yeah, exactly, Blade. I haven't checked Destiny 2. I don't know if Destiny 2 is good, but Destiny 1's got some good stuff. I'm going to stop talking about my writing, though. Let's go back to, let's get through here. You're right, I do have a pretty decent setup for my own recording. Favorite lore regarding the Temple of Syrinx for D2. I'm going to look that up right now. Let's figure what that is. The Temple of... Oh boy. Oh boy. You're right. This is Rush. Oh my god, Rush, what are you doing? Rush, no! No, Rush! Don't credit the liner notes to acknowledge the genius of Ayn Rand. Don't do it, Rush. No! Oh no. Yeah. Okay. We're gonna stop reading into that. All right. Let's go back. Let's go back to social exchange. The idea that you shouldn't be allowed to take for free. Everybody who wants to take from the pot has to put things back in the pot later, right? Now, the contest between heroism and deference, or hawks and doves, is a conflict over resources, food, territory, mates, prevents a biological organism with the opportunity to cooperate by competing in less mutually destructive ways. Now, this is given the idea that two animals meet in the woods and they both want the same piece of food. They can immediately fight to the death for that food, and one of them will die. The other will likely end up much weaker due to the contest. That is generally a bad idea for most animals. Most animals don't ever want to fight to the death. They tend to have these elaborate displays where the bigger animal will push the other around, but never really harm them. Or the smaller animal won't stick around even after it's proved weaker. It'll just leave because it won't try to fight a losing battle, because it knows that the fight itself isn't good for both animals, right? In this case, it's attributing the heroism and deference. The idea that when you are in a fight, the one who is weaker should defer to the one who is stronger, right? Which is why we have these heroic virtues, as for Berlin, 1997. The heroic virtues of fortitude, bravery, skill, and wit. These ideas that people are good if they're brave, if they're smart, if they're skilled, if they're strong. And the idea that people are also good if they're humble, if they're obedient and respectful. They need to be both so that they can balance between the two at any time. Moving on, we've got the division. The idea that we can be fair with one another with bargaining. The Nash equilibrium. Also, my favorite name for a study ever, Skyrim's 1996. Yeah. There's some really cool Greek ethics dilemmas about being purely selfishly motivated, yet still requiring an altruistic. Okay. And it's fought against much bigger monsters like mammoths, idealizes small. I don't know if that's necessarily because it was big animals. I think that was more of a metaphorical trait towards oppression from a larger source, and not necessarily St. George versus a dragon or David versus Goliath. It was more along the lines of culturally, we must be able to take up arms even against a threatening foe, right? It doesn't really necessarily have to be mammoths or T-Rexes or whatever you want to say people were fighting. I know people weren't around fighting dinosaurs, but I'm saying it to piss off Beery. So everyone play along like you totally agree that dinosaurs and humans are around at the same time. Moving on from that, people need to have the bravery, the heroism to fight somebody when it's in their best interest to do so. It's an important part of morality. But at the same time, it's better for people to be humble and defer to others who are experts, or rely on somebody who's powerful and respect an authority figure, rather than just blindly fighting anybody who tries to control you. Because that's just a bad time for the cooperative group. Right? If everybody's willing to fight to the death over every single scrap of food, people will be dead pretty quick. So the next one would be... You're right. Division and fairness is the contested resources when a contested resource is indivisible. For example, two animals are meeting in the woods and there's enough berries on the bush to feed both of them. They will likely bargain or divide the resource in some amount. Now, In the case of powerful individuals, it results in shares of a thing. For example, a lion cannot defend its carcass against a whole pack of hyenas, but it can certainly take a greater share and then leave the rest behind. Yeah, exactly. It's never a perfect balance, but it's saying that, remember, cowardice is not good. It's not cowardly if someone better can do it. It's deferring. It's the idea of understanding when to pass the torch. I could certainly go out and I need to move some furniture. I could certainly just yank it and pull it and rip it around and try to move it on my own. But it's better if I call my friend and say, hey bro, I'll buy you pizza and a 12-pack of beer if you come over and help me move all my furniture. It'll be easier for me. I know that I shouldn't just say, no, I have to fight this furniture. I have to be the one to do it because I'm the best. That's nonsensical. Right? Yeah. Again, the opposite is also true, though. You should step up when you are the expected person who can do the job. You shouldn't just never do anything because you're sure someone better can do it. You should at least do it what you can do, right? You shouldn't call your friends over, offer them pizza and beer, and then just let them carry the furniture and just sit in your ass. That wouldn't be fair to them, right? It's the idea that you have to balance it. You've got to do some balance. It may never be the perfect balance, but it's the idea that you got to do something. But you also don't have to do everything. And of course, this is for the purpose of cooperation and morality as cooperation. The next part would be division and fairness, is the idea of human rules we've created. Like, I'm sure you've ever done this when you're with a sibling or with a friend and you have one piece of cake. You say, I cut it, you choose which side you want. That's fair, right? Both sides can easily see how we are both incentivized in taking the fair slice. If I am cutting the cake and I know you can choose either one, I will try to cut the cake as evenly as possible. However, if you tell me I cut it and I choose it, then you're incentivized in cutting a giant slice for you and a little slice for me because I don't have a choice. Meet in the middle, split the difference, take turns are just common things people have done and will continue to do forever. An idea of equal shares is, of course, economically prevalent everywhere. Morality as cooperation predicts that because dividing resources avoids costly fighting, and therefore realizes a mutual benefit, it'll be regarded as morally good. Right? It will explain why fairness and willingness to compromise have been regarded as important components of morality, both in Rawls and Penix and Chapman. The next step here is our property rights. This is the final one that talks about conflicts of resources can be resolved by deference to prior possession. I want your shirt, or there's a shirt. I want it, you want it, but it already belongs to you. I should respect that. Morally, I should respect that it's your shirt. I shouldn't just take it from you because I want it. If there was a shirt in the middle of the road and we both wanted it, then we'd go up to one of these other ideas of who's stronger, or can we divide the shirt and each take one half of it, or whatever, right? The idea that property rights are, for the most part, cross-culturally universal. Every culture has ownership in some way. You're right. That is historically, right? Which is why the divvying up rules here of I cut, you choose, or right down the middle, is more fair sounding to both parties. Again, people will always vie for their own personal gain, but that's wrong to do, right? We all see, like, for example, if we see somebody has been given the rights to determine how many apples everybody gets, there's 10 people and there's 1,000 apples, and we know he could just give everybody 100 apples, but he instead gives everybody 90 and he takes 190, then everyone sees, wait, that's not fair. That is wrong. We as a group of people will instantly think, that's not a good thing that person did, right? Until he argues, well, no, I had to do the work, so because I take the little extra, exactly, Sirius, because I did the work, I get a reward, in where it's up to the group to decide, is that a fair reward? What if the guy took 991 apples and then gave one to everybody? Is that fair? No way. Everyone's like, hey, no, that's not good at all. That's not okay. Because that's not fair, right? So fairness is an important part of morality, especially from morality as cooperation, where we have to agree that dividing resources is morally good, but dividing them fairly is also more important. Also, thank you, Quizlet. I'm having a lot of fun. I enjoy this kind of thing. This is like, if I could just do this for 10 hours a day, I would do it. This is great. This is like my passion. I just love talking to people about shit like this and learning new things. Okay, listen. You're not wrong, but okay, so property rights, blah 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 blah. Now, those are the ideas behind these things, but they're not true yet, as we're doing a study. This is a study. This isn't just saying these things are true. We're going to prove it. So here are predictions of what we're going to find when we attempt to prove this. We have identified 7 types of cooperation, and hence we've got 7 candidate moral domains. Obligations to family, group loyalty, reciprocity, bravery, respect, fairness, and property rights. Not really connected to anything except maybe predestination. Laplace's demon. I've definitely heard the term. Let me look it up before I make a fool of myself, though. Yes. This is something I am familiar with. Although, not as much as I would have liked. I've never read any of his actual writings. I've just viewed over it before. It is okay to take a break, or just yell at us for being idiots. But yeah. For everybody who's confused with what we're talking about, let's go over it real quick. So, Laplace's demon. In the history of silence, Rocco's basilisk will do. No published articulation of causal determination. According to determinism, if someone, the demon in this case, knows the precise locomotion and momentum of every atom in the universe, their past and future values for any given time, they can be calculated from the laws of classical mechanics. The idea of that if you can look at a slice of the world and know everything that takes place, or, here we go, here's a direct translation. We may regard the present state of the universe as the effect of its past and the cause of its future. An intellect, which at a certain moment would know all the forces that set nature in motion, and all the positions of all items with which nature is composed. If this intellect were also vast enough to submit these data to analysis, it would embrace a single formula to the movements of the greatest bodies in the universe and those of the tiniest atom, such that an intellectual nothing would be uncertain. For such an intellect, nothing would be uncertain, and the future, just like the past, would be present before its eyes. For example, if you knew everything that had happened, you must then know everything that will happen, assuming you can create an accurate model. This is a really cool idea in a lot of science fiction stories with like AIs that have been made to create a simulation of the universe or whatever. I love it. It's cool. We don't need to go too much into it. Rocco's basilisk will do. All right. Rocco's basilisk. This is not one I'm familiar with as much. Less wrong? This is a Black Mirror episode, it looks like. Alright, let's find an actual article here. Alright. Okay, we'll add this to the list here real quick. Alright, so Rocco's basilisk. Rocco, a thought experiment of the state, which is an otherwise benevolent future AI system, tortures people who heard of the AI before it came into existence, and failed to work tirelessly to bring it into existence in order to incentivize said work. Using Udosky's time-position theory, the post claimed that doing so beneficial for every AI, even though it cannot causally affect people in the present. This idea became known as Roko's basilisk, based on the idea that merely hearing about the idea would give the hypothetical AI system stronger incentives to employ blackmail. I don't know if this is necessarily to I have no mouth and I must scream. I think it's a bit different, but yeah, you're right. That is the idea of an AI that doesn't like humanity. So the idea is pretty much that if we have an AI that knows it is going to be perfect and can backwards look at everything in reality, knowing about the AI is cause for it to punish you if you don't help create the AI perfectly, right? If you don't do everything in your power to do so. Honestly, I don't think it makes that much sense, because, how should I describe it? Well, yes. The idea of a memetic hazard, an information hazard, a cognitive hazard are fair. But at the same time, I can't personally envision an idea of which the AI would. Because, again, as an AI, it might have its own set of moralities, right? It proposes the goal of an AI. We don't know what its goal is. Why would the AI want to punish the people who didn't bring it into existence? For what purpose would it have? We have to declare that it might. Yes, hypothetically, a future being. Why not get rid of the AI tag altogether? Why not have it be a future god that, because you didn't worship it now, will punish you eternally, right? What happened in reality? If we go over the idea of, if we're going by the Bible, all humans who don't worship God will go to hell, if that's what we're putting up. What about the people who never learned about it? Like, the idea of somebody in the past thinking, what if there's a God that if I don't worship it now, will punish me for all eternity, right? I understand the thing here, but I don't think it's that big a deal. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. On the topic of that, let's, I don't want to do this right now. Moral licensing. Alright, let's look up Pascal's Wager. We'll bring that up here so everyone can read about it. And moral licensing. Moral licensing. Alright. Here we go. We will bring these up so we can talk about them. Pascal's Wager. It posits that human beings bet with their lives that God exists or does not. A rational person should live as though God exists and seek to believe in God, for if God does not actually exist, a person has a finite loss of the things you give up. But if God does exist, you lose infinite loss and reluctance with infinite gain, right? It's fair. I don't really think it's a valid topic because the infinite loss, infinite gain, again, is part of it that doesn't really follow along. But it's a good thing to know about, is the cool thing. Exactly, Quiz. Like, yes, it's related to the previous ideas. So, self-licensing is a term in social psychology and marketing that describes the subconscious phenomenon where increased confidence and security in oneself tends to make the individual worry less about the idea of subsequent immoral behavior. Because I'm worth it. I'm special. I'm more important than that person. I need to drive down. You're right, Bepsy. The mistranslation of the word Gehenna is actually an important idea. And where it's straight up, you're gonna get buried in a place. Oh, okay. But modern Christianity and Catholicism does postulate that hell is real, as I believe Dante's Inferno was canonized. So, whatever. Yeah, Satan and the meaning adversary, right? Like, we can get into other things, but whatever the case. Moral licensing, yes. Moral credentials can be obtained vicariously. A person behaves that they themselves have moral credentials when they observe another person or group identifying with egalitarianism. Well, he's called the Morning Star for a reason, baby. Yes. Again, exactly. Study in Taiwan. People who take multivitamin pills, who believe that they are receiving health benefits from, are more prone to behave in unhealthy activities. I think he's canon. I will Google it, actually. Let me look up. Oh no! I'm not getting... I'm not getting... This is what I get if I look up, is Lucian canon, everybody? I forgot to put the word Bibble in there. Yeah, I don't know. No. Yeah, Christianity Stack Exchange. Where in the Bible does it say Lucifer is one of the angels or archangels? In the Bible, it's only hinted as rather directly stated. Here's the evidence. In Job 1:6, we learn that Satan was in heaven with the other angels. One day, the angels came with them and said with the Lord, and Satan also came with them. That Satan was in heaven is also seen in Zechariah 3:1-2 and Luke 10:18 and Revelation 12:9. The great dragon was hurled down, the ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the world astray. He was hurled to the earth and his angels with him. This thought is also stated by Jesus in Matthew 25:41. Then he will say to those on his left, depart from me, who are accursed, or into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. That he has his own angels is further clue to him being a former angel, and incidentally, Isaiah 14:12-15 is often used to show why he fell, because he wanted to ascend to God's throne. There we go. I've assembled evidence Satan being an angel, but it's not proof. See comments below. Leads me to consider proof by exhaustion. If Satan was not an angel, what could he be? So yeah, Lucifer being Satan and... Yeah, see, though have fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, O son of the morning, how art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations. Yeah, so Satan is there. Lucifer, again, Hebrew word that means shining one. The Septuagint uses the Greek word which means bringer of dawn, which is why some translations render the original Hebrew morning star or day star. But Jerome's Latin Vulgate uses Lucifer, light bearer, and his accounts for the appearance of the term are in various versions of the Bible. The name Lucifer occurs once in scriptures and only in some version of the Bible. Traditionally, Lucifer is the name the English generally refer to the devil before being cast from heaven, but this description is given to a man and not to a spirit creature, is further seen by the statement, down to Sheol you will be brought. Sheol is the common grave of mankind, not a place, occupied by Satan the devil. Additionally, those seeing Lucifer brought into this condition ask, is this the man that was agitating the earth? Clearly this verse refers to the human, not the spirit creature. So, you got some stuff in the air. It's the Bible. There's a lot going on in the Bible. And it references itself a lot, so we're just going to pretend it doesn't. Right? You're right, you want to watch Neon Genesis Evangelion and feel bad. But yes, self-licensing, again, like you were saying, is, yeah, helping hands, loaning you money, therefore I can later steal your donut. Yes. Because I helped you a little bit, I can now hurt you because I am allowed to. Alright, let's go back to moral foundation theory. Okay. Versus... So moral foundation theory was the one I talked about a little while ago. Has these 5. So, the morality as cooperation is actually held up in contest to moral foundations theory. The most widely used and thus far since attempt to map moral domain is the moral foundations theory from 2007, operationalized into the moral foundation foundation questionnaire by Graham 2011. Like the morality as cooperation, MFT takes cooperative approach to morality and maintains that there are many moral domains. But unlike morality as cooperation, moral foundation theory does not derive its domains from any underlying theory of cooperation, i.e. Haidt and Joseph 2011, and proposes only 5: care, fairness, in-group, authority, and purity. Like morality as cooperation, it includes domains that dedicated to group loyalty, in-group, deference, authority, and fairness. But unlike, it does not include domains associated to family, reciprocity, heroism, or property. It has no foundation dedicated to kin altruism. The MFQ does have 2 items pertaining to kin, but they appear under fairness and in-group. Nor has MFT any foundation dedicated to reciprocal altruism. MFT places reciprocity, a solution to iterated prisoners' dilemmas, and fairness, a solution to bargaining problems, under the same headings. And the MFQ has no items pertaining to reciprocity. MFT has no foundations. The MFQ has no items dedicated to hawkish displays of dominance, such as bravery. And the only mention of property occurs once in an item about inheritance under the foundation of fairness. We're building a recursion stack of thought experiments? You're right. You are completely right. Alright. Oh, arms. They hurt. Okay. I gesticulate when I talk, which doesn't help me because I'm a VTuber, so you can't see my arms at all, but it's fine. I have more water. I just drank something. I need to stop to get more water, because usually I take 1 glass of water to last me 4 hours, but I've been talking a hell of a lot more than usual. Alright. The MAC predicts that moral psychology will be sensitive to the benefits, care and altruism, and cost, harms of social interaction. For what is cooperation but a particular configuration of benefits and costs? But as we've seen, MAC suggests that there are different types of benefits and costs, with different causes and consequences. For example, some harms, such as murder, are considered morally bad because they violate one or more cooperative principles. They break implicit social contracts against the use of force, and constitute an escalation of conflict as opposed to its peaceful resolution. Other harms, such as punishment or self-defense, are considered morally good because they promote cooperation. This perspective suggests that it is a mistake to attempt to analyze benefits and costs in isolation, outside of their cooperative context, by placing them in a separate, generic domain dedicated to care or harm. This is again arguing against utilitarianism. You can't just say, because it hurts, it's bad, because it feels good, it's good. You have to attribute it in the cooperative context. Purity, meanwhile, in moral foundations theory, has been described as the avoidance of people with diseases, parasites, and waste products. It has no explicitated connection to cooperation. On the contrary, it's regarded as an odd corner of morality precisely because it's not concerned with how we treat other people. By contrast, MAC suggests the problem of avoiding pathogens and other disgust-elicting stimuli is not a moral problem per se. Instead, pure or impure behavior is only moralized when it provides benefits or imposes costs on others. For example, by putting their health at risk. So avoiding rotten fruit on a free is not a moral issue, but coughing in public without covering your mouth is. And because there are many different ways in which disgusting behavior might influence others, the problem of avoiding incest is not the same as the problem of avoiding people with poor personal hygiene. MAC suggests that it's a mistake to single out purity as a separate generic domain. You're right, eugenics, in theory, is utilitarian. It will provide a net positive for the more people if we reduce disabilities, if we reduce disfigurements, if we ensure that proper breeding takes course, the more people will be more happy in the end, at least according to the utilitarian eugenics theory, which I don't personally follow, to make that clear. That's another thing, is I talk about a lot of topics today. I don't want you to assume that everything I talk about is a personal held belief. I mean, clearly, if I read a lot about it and I care about it, it's going to influence me in some way, but these authors have their own opinions. I don't want to say that these are my thoughts. These are what they thought of. I'm just kind of building what I feel around them. Alright. 3.02. Relation Model Theory. Similarly, like morality with cooperation, Fiske's Relational Models Theory, or RMT, takes a cooperative approach to morality and maintains that there are many moral domains. But unlike MAC, RMT does not derive its domains from any underlying theory of cooperation, and possesses only 4. Unity, hierarchy, equality, and proportionality. This is from Fiske and Rye and Fiske in 2014 and 2011 respectively. Unlike MAC, RMT's domain of unity does not distinguish between family and group. Hierarchy does not distinguish between hawkish heroism and dovish deference, and equality and proportionality do not distinguish between reciprocity and fairness. I am not a Socrates. I'm not smart enough. I am a very stupid dragon who has a smooth brain, but who likes to read big words that make me sound smart. I am the definition of pretentious. Also, because I enjoy reading these things, but I would not call myself particularly smart. Sun Tzu. There's a lot to talk about with Sun Tzu. I'm not gonna get into it today, but I don't want to be Diogenes either. I don't want to live in a pot. That would suck. I have stuff that I like. I don't want to see a poor kid without a bowl and throw out my only bowl because he needs it more than me and I don't really need it. I like my bowl. It's important to me. No, I'm not in a barrel. I don't want to J.O. in public and just call people that I'm a real human and they're not for not doing it. That's weird. Diogenes, why? To be fair, I respect the commitment to the bit, but at the same time, I could never live like that. Alright. The theory of dyadic morality. Unlike MAC and MFT and RMT, you could Meiji and die saving a horse. You know what? Fair enough. Fair enough. So, dyadic morality does not take a cooperative approach to morality, but instead argues the function of moral rules is to minimize harm to others, and is therefore a form of utilitarianism. Dyadic morality recognizes there may be different genres of harm that correspond to the domains, but argues that all moral violations are processed by general-purpose psychological mechanisms as opposed to distinct special-purpose mechanisms. Like MAC and RMT, TDM does not accept MFT's claim that purity is a distinct domain of morality. Indeed, TDM has marshaled considerable evidence to suggest that impure or disgusting acts are merely a particular form of harmful behavior. Dragonogenes, that's a good bit. That's a good bit. When I start screaming about plucked chickens, you know what to call me. And finally, we've got the Dissoli and Kurzban's side-taking morality, which is arguing or agrees that cooperation explains moral behavior. In quotes, evolutionary theories of morality that focus on understanding cooperation do an excellent job of explaining why humans care for offspring, cooperate in groups, trade favors, communicate honestly, and respect property, end quote. However, whereas MAC would argue these cooperative theories also explain people would make and express moral judgments, for example, that is actually an interesting take. Why is cannibalism bad? Here, did us with the giant ants. Alright, fair enough. Well, we could argue cannibalism is bad because it hurts other people to do it. Like, you have to kill somebody to get it, thus, because you're killing people, it's bad. The end. Well, then you would argue, well, what's the point with natural cannibalism? Somebody dies, so you eat their body because it's better to preserve the resources. Again, Quizlebet, it's really dangerous to do so. We, as biological beings, have, again, our purity thing, where we inherently don't want to do things that are dangerous. It explains why people are afraid of snakes and spiders. Well, snakes and spiders can be poisonous. Don't touch them. Natural for their fear. Yeah, right? Some cultures did eat their dead, and some cultures, that was normal. However, as a whole, most animals with like a higher cognitive function do not engage in cannibalistic behavior. Some do, but most do not. It's just, that's the way it is. People, again, yeah, eating prions folds your brain meats. Exactly. Exactly how it works. Don't eat them. They're bad for you. Where was I? Morality's cooperation allows people to make moral judgments. For example, to decide with whom to cooperate in the future, to warn friends and family of uncooperative individuals, to enhance one's reputation as trustworthy and heroic, or to recruit allies to prosecute an offender. STTM argues and said the sole function of moral judgment is to provide salient focal points around which people coordinate when taking sides in interpersonal conflicts. STTM maintains that a wide range of content, including cooperative rules, can fulfill this function. Alright, the content of morality. With regard to content, an analysis of the historical ethnographic records of 60 societies. Exactly, right? It's why, yeah, it's crazy. Going through the ethnographic records of 60 societies found the moral valence of these 7 cooperative behaviors was uniformly positive, and there is evidence for the majority of these cooperative moral values in the majority of cultures, in all regions of the world. This is done in 2019. Research on more contemporary population paints a similar picture. First, a survey of family values involving student samples from 30 countries and responses to items in the World Value Survey conducted over 65 societies indicate that helping kin is widely considered to be morally good. Second, responses from internet samples, the in-group items in the Moral Foundation's questionnaire, and responses from student samples in 20 countries to items from the Schwartz Basic Value Survey indicate that helping your group is widely considered to be morally good. Third, endorsement of the norms of positive and negative reciprocity in student samples in Britain, Italy, and responses to some items in the values in action inventory of strengths in 54 countries, and Schwartz's value scale indicate that reciprocity is widely considered to be morally good. Fourth, investigation comes to honor in U.S. Turkey indicate that hawkish traits such as bravery are considered to be morally good. Fifth, responses to authority items in Moral Foundation's questionnaire and into items from the Schwartz Basic Value Surveys indicate that respecting superiors is widely considered to be morally good. Dropping pebbles in low water. Who do they think they are? Exactly, right? Crows being able to use tools is absolutely bonkers to me. Like, it's crazy. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. This entire paragraph is pretty much, we asked people and they said the things we think would be good are good. Moving on. However, previous research has not provided a full test of the predictions about the content of morality. No previous study has investigated the moral relevance of all 7 forms in a single contemporary representative sample. Instead, the study's reviews have measured different aspects of morality in different ways. The scales they employ typically measure something other than the moral relevance or valence of cooperation. For example, they ask whether a person or a society possesses a particular trait, rather than whether the trait is moral. And the samples they use are typically composed of only students. Right, they totally do. They really do, Quiz. But at the same time, I also find it really cool to be able to look at this and be like, oh, I can click this link and figure out what this means. Or I can go over here and learn about this. But yeah, it's definitely something that I think would benefit a lot of people if there was more easily accessible studies. Okay, so. the structure of morality. 7 different types of cooperation, blah, 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 blah. This really isn't important, this part here. Just, we did the study. We did an extrapolated factor analysis. Conformity factor. So conformity factor analysis is essentially how close does like them saying something come to what was actually real. Dude's prison guard power and they turned into dicks. Yeah, I wonder why. Alright, I'm gonna skip this part because it's not super important. It's been a while since I read this whole article, so I don't remember all the study parts. Okay. So, the first study is to develop a questionnaire. The methods employed were 7 types of cooperative behavior, how to measure them. They use a scale to determine what types of behavior envisaged by the MAC, particularly the domains of family, responsibility, and property, are considered more morally relevant, and also whether they represent distinct domains. The relevance scale, however, asks participants whether you will decide whether something is right or wrong. To what extent are the following considerations relevant to your thinkings? So, for example, whether or not someone did what they had agreed to do, or whether or not someone kept something that didn't belong to them. Participants responded using an animated slider on a visual analog scale marked 0 to 100, and labeled left to right. Not at all relevant, not very relevant, significantly relevant, somewhat relevant, very relevant, extremely relevant. The judgment scale was originally developed in order to overcome a perceived limitation of the relevance scale, namely that it might assess second-order views about how one makes moral judgment rather than first-order moral judgments themselves. According to Graham, relevance does not necessarily measure how people actually make moral judgments, hence judgment items were introduced to provide more contextualized and concrete items. The scale to provide additional tests of whether that they are. They ask participants, to what extent do you agree with the following statements? Sample items included, you should always put the interests of your family first, and courage in the face of adversity is the most admirable trait. Again, 0 to 100, strongly disagree, all the way to strongly agree. Okay. I'm really tired. I did not get no sleep last night. We focused on principle moral value each 7 hypotheses. For example, hawkishness. We focus on heroism as opposed to fortitude, generosity, or wit. We aim to produce items that could, in principle, be used to understood by anyone at any time. The items focused on interpersonal relationships and avoided any mention of modern technology or governments. The 2 sets of items were presented to identify heavily and skewed 57 moral relevance and 97 moral judgment items. Yes, we're saying morality is cooperation, and that cooperation is inherently good because it benefits the most people. And this is actually here. So, for example, this is the study here. Here is your file, actually. Yeah, it's pretty. There's a lot going on. Can I? Is there a download button? I gotta log in for it. But of course, you could go to this website and log in and do all this stuff. But essentially, can I open this up? I can. Okay. This is just the article. Shit. Not what I wanted. I wanted the study. Relevance. Version 1. Whether or not someone in your family was harmed. Whether or not someone acted to protect their family, right? So these are the 57 things, right? That is like, is a judgment if this is good or bad. So this is a test, essentially. We asked a bunch of people, is this good? Does it help you to think of this person as good if someone in your family was harmed? Or if they were protecting their own family? or if they betrayed their country, or if they were disloyal, or if they were cowardly or heroic, or if they were a bad loser. Like if they lost in a fighting game and said, I was blocking, you were cheating, that's not fair. Your character's overpowered, you only won because you're playing an S tier. Like, right? That would be a bad loser. If they were biased, if they took more than their own fair share. And those are kind of things of, does it help you if those things? Whereas those are relevance. And the judgments themselves were, here. Oh, shit. How do I do this? Okay. I got this. I gotta move this is pain. Okay. Yes. Nihilism is a counterpoint to relativism and absolutism. However, it's not a equal counterpoint because nihilism is... How do I word it correctly? An independent philosophy, right? It doesn't connect itself to other philosophies well. Here, so I'm going to zoom in on these a little bit, actually. So, number 1. If a member of your family commits a serious crime, you must report them to the police. Yes or no? How much do you agree so? Is it disgraceful when people don't look after the elder relatives? People should be willing to fight to defend their country. It's best to forgive and forget. These were these questionnaires that were given to these people all around the world and asked, how much do you agree with it? And then they matched up these ideas. So, the people, well, we'll talk about how they matched this up. But, for example, the people, adults over 18 living in the UK and being primary speakers of English. Studies made available on the Peer Profile website for 11 days in 2015. Respondents were provided with information on the study aims and methods. If they provide informed consent, participants were directed to the study site. They were told the goal of the study to investigate people's sense of right and wrong. Describe what people think as morally good versus morally bad, moral versus immoral, ethical versus unethical, praiseworthy versus blameworthy. They then completed the version of the relevant judgment scales. The 2 scales and items therein were presented in randomized order. They were provided the basic demographic data, including age, sex, nationality. They could participate only once. It took around 12 minutes, which was paid around 5 cents. Or, no, sorry, 50 cents. 50 pence. Words are hard. Responses were collected versus anonymous internet-based surveys, such as this, depend on their sustained effort and engagement and are so vulnerable to the inattention and careless responding, to which results. To check careless responses, we use direct instructed intonation as an attention check. Attention check was an item appeared after the MACQ and the MFQ sets as to a careless responding increases the survey length and participation time. We also applied further quality controls from who do not complete the survey or do not provide demographic data, or who provided responses suggesting spoiled or inauthentic answers. For example, always rating the item 0, 50, or 100, including those that were reverse coded. Right? So, like, saying, you should protect your family, they give it 100. You should not protect your family, they gave it 100. They'll just say no to those people. That's not okay. So, 2,400 people entered the survey. 500 were inattentive. 151 were incomplete. 350 were spoiled. It was a sample of 1,392 UK working age adults. Mostly female, 1 transgender. Age was a mean of 47, with a standard deviation of 11. The items for analysis were selected with a correlation matrices for the relevant. Deterministic is 4.8 times 10 to the negative 17th, and judgment items were 1.45 times 10 to the negative 19th. Yes, scale ratings do introduce decision paralysis, but it's useful to have a pretty wide scale, so it's not like, I'm just going to kind of slide it over here. Because I feel good, but not really good, but like a little bit bad. So you place like 55 or whatever, right? Because remember, the individual notches were not numbered. It was just on a scale from 1 to 100, whereabouts do you put this slider? Right? Is the idea. Okay, so here is the actual content in the study. Ratings for relevant items and subscales range from somewhat to very relevant to morality. So, family was pretty good. Group was pretty good. Reciprocity was pretty good. Also, let me hit up the exclamation point music so everybody knows this music's actually done by my friend. It was composed by Higenren, who is an amazing musician, and you should all listen to his stuff because this stuff's a bop. Okay, so group, family, reciprocity, heroism, deference were all good. Fairness was and property was good. These were the relevance of how relevant are these things for you making your choice of good or bad. The next is judgment. How actually good or bad are these choices? Everybody pretty much agreed that family's good, groups okay, reciprocity's heroism's okay, deference, family is okay, and property is not as great. Again, people don't really care as much if because I owned it first as a valid response to a question. Now, the Kurobachi's alpha system subclasses range from 0.76 to 0.68 for the relevance and 0.53 to 0.83 for the judgment. Given they were developed to measure two aspects of moral psychology slightly different, we began by analyzing each separately before attempting to combine them. Although we did a priori hypothesis about the factor structure, we first conducted exploratory factor analysis on each scale to see whether hypothesized structure emerged from the data. The Kaiser-Meyer-Olkin index indicated superb sampling adequacy for relevance of 0.95. Individual items were ranging from 0.1 to 0.97. And Meteora sampling adequacy for judgment of 0.85. Sampling ranged from 0.62 to 0.92. Bartlett's test of sphericity indicated that neither of the correlation matrices were identity matrices. More relevancy, honestly, this is just numbers. Most people aren't going to get what they're talking about. Let me just get to I'm just going to skip a lot of this. Honestly, a lot of this is notation that matters to people who really care about the minutia of the numbers. And if you really wanted to go through it, it would be important, but we don't need to today. This is not really worth it. Alright. The results support the prediction about the content of morality, namely that each of the 7 types of cooperation would be considered morally relevant. Indeed, the 4 new domains uniquely predicted by morality's cooperation, family, reciprocity, heroism, and property, were considered in general more relevant than domains shared with MFT, group, deference, and fairness. The results also support MAC's predictions regarding the structure of morality, namely that each of the 7 types of cooperation would constitute a distinct domain. Exploratory factor analysis delivered the predicted 7 factors on both the relevance and judgment scales, and confirmatory factor analysis demonstrated the 7-factor model was a good fit for both scales separately and combined. The results also suggest caution when combining scales. Simply aggregating the 2 methodologies to distinct relevance judgment scales is inferior to a model that accounts for potential discrepancies between them. Whatever. So, following that, they did another study to test the other stuff, and essentially found, oh shit, it's way worse. Straight up. So, I'm not going to talk too much about it, but the moral foundations theory was not able to identify the domains, the unique domains, which was care and purity, and was not able to distinguish the domains groups, deference, and fairness about them. Welcome, Renvalia. Let me do a shout out real quick. I've actually gotten okay at typing your name now. Haha. Yeah, Warhammer. I love good Warhamster game. Welcome everybody who's stopping by. We are, we're talking about morality and philosophy. Yay! Let me turn this down a little bit. Made of Faith. I love this song. Alright. Okay. Whatever the case, we don't really need to go too much into this. God is dead because God is dumb. Haha, yes, exactly. So, this morality as cooperation is essentially put forward in a pretty good rate that when you're looking at morality as cooperation, most people agree with it. Here's a bunch of numbers. They got a bunch of numbers. Alright, I gotta shout out somebody else as well. I've never met you, Dr. Blitzen, but I respect you. And thank you for stopping by. How do I spell this? There we go. You were also... Oh, you're probably playing each other. That'd be why you raided. Quick, what armies were you playing? I bet it was, I bet it was, Mechanicus, Dr. Blitzen. What army would somebody named Dr. Blitzen play? I'm gonna guess Dark Eldar. Imperial Guards? Chaos! 5,000 points! What are you guys doing? 5,000 points! Oh. That's a lot. Never Dark Eldar? Okay, I don't know. I like Dark Eldar. I think Taluses are cool. Okay. We're pretty much done with morality as cooperation as a concept. Normally a Tyranid player. Ooh, Nids. Again, so... Yes, this quote-unquote proved that if you take morality, you can line it up to be under the 7 assumptions that they put forward, and that people will answer studies accordingly. Next game is AdMech vs. Iron Warriors, 10,000 points. Oh. I feel my soul leaving my body already. Oh, that hurts me, Boneworm. Ow. Okay, no, we're not gonna do Turing completeness. Sorry, Quizlebit, we're skipping that for now. Titans fill more of your house than furniture. 40,000. Yeah, for Warhammer 40,000. It's 40,000 points. And I play Infantry Imperial Guard. I only use infantry models. Excuse me. It's nothing but conscripts. Versus my opponent, who's an orc player who takes nothing but grots. And the two of us just shake each other's hands and don't even put our armies on the table and agree it was a tie. Yay. Alright. What are we doing? Where were we? Okay, we're gonna jump ship here, because I kind of, like, lost my train of thought. Let's do moral realism. That'll be fun. Let's do moral realism next. Exactly. Yes, good night, Valestro. Have a good evening. So, moral realism. Okay. Let's read this word for word right now. See if we can get across the idea. Taken at face value, the claim that Nigel has a moral obligation to keep his promise, like the claim that Nyx is a black cat, purports to report a fact and is true if things are as the claim reports. Moral realists are those who think that in these respects, things should be taken at face value. Moral claims do not or do purport to report facts and that they are true if they get the facts right. Moreover, they hold at least some moral claims are actually true. That much is the common and more or less defining ground of moral realism. Although some accounts of moralism see it as involving additional commitments, say, to the independence of the moral facts from human thought and practice, or to those facts being the objective in some specified way. The question of does morality exist if no living being exists is actually a pretty cool one, because it comes across the idea of if you can't feel anything, what do you want to do? Also, I will quickly say thank you to Gomoji, Gomoji and Dr. Gomoji for following, and I believe Reticle followed earlier, and I didn't call them out because I was too caught up in my argument. So we're going to move on from that. Okay, so our idea here is that a moral realist takes something to be true, and these moral proponents are just straight up correct, regardless of the circumstances in which they occur. Okay, so as a result, the people who reject moral realism are very usefully divided into two categories. People who think moral claims do not purport to report facts in light of which they are true or false. For example, non-cognitivists, people who don't believe that they are true. And 2, those who think that moral claims do carry the purport, but deny that any moral claims are actually true. Ha 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 ha. It's worth noting that while moral realists are united in their cognitivism and their rejection of error theories, they disagree amongst themselves, not only which moral claims are actually true, but what about the world that makes those claims true. Moral realism is not a particular substantive moral view, nor does it carry a distinctive metaphysical commitment over and above the commitment that comes with thinking moral claims can be true or false and some are true. Still, much of the debate about moral realism resolves around either what it takes for claims to be true or false at all, with some arguing that moral claims do not have what it takes, or what it would take specifically for moral claims to be true, with some arguing that moral claims would require something the world does not provide. Let's go through some of these ideas. The longest standing argument is found in the extent and depth of moral disagreement. The mere fact of disagreement does not raise a challenge for moral realism. Disagreement is to be found in virtually any area, even when no one doubts the claims at stake purport to report true facts, and everyone grants that some claims are true. But disagreements differ, and many believe that some sort of disagreements one finds when it comes to morality are best explained by supposing two things. One of two things. One, that moral claims are not actually the business of reporting facts, but are rather our way of expressing emotions or of controlling others' behavior, or at least taking a stand for and against certain things, or that moral claims are in the business of reporting facts, but the required facts are just not to be found, i.e., you can't prove that that is good, right? There's no way to prove it. You can't prove to me that this is a good idea or this is a bad idea. You would definitely die of radiation poisoning. However, you would also die of potassium poisoning and a whole bunch of other poisonings, including your stomach exploding. So, although true, it is a facetious statement because it's not the only thing that would kill you there. It's like saying, if you shot yourself into space, you'd freeze to death. Well, yes, but you would die first of a few other issues. Exactly, right? You would die before it comes to the state. Yes, you're right. You would require to eat 40,000 bananas in 10 minutes to die of radiation poisoning from the radiation emitted from those bananas, but you would die by something earlier. That's our morally true statement. Like that? Thank you. I try hard with it every time. It's fun. All right. So now we know a little bit more. We're not going to go too far into moral realism, but that's our basic idea. Let's go take a look at moral relativism. So moral relativism is an important topic in metaethics. It's also widely discussed outside philosophy, for example, by political or religious leaders. It's also controversial among philosophers and non-philosophers alike. This is perhaps non-surprising in the view of recent evidence that people's intuitions about moral relativism vary. Going to bed with nightmares of older Japanese lady who smoked 50 packs a day. Come on, I'm a dragonsmith. I gotta be rumbly, or what's the point? It's because my throat's full of rocks, because I eat rocks. I'm an earth dragon. Alright, Satoshi Kon movie, right. Okay, so the term moral relativism is understood in a variety of ways. Most often it's associated with an empirical thesis that are deep and widespread moral disagreements, and a meta-ethical thesis that the truth or justification of moral judgments is not absolute. Alright, and yes, good luck and good night, Smith, if you are leaving now. But relative to the moral standard, some person or group of persons, sometimes moral relativism is connected with a normative position about how we ought to think or act towards those with whom we morally disagree, most commonly that we should tolerate them. there's a historical background involved with moral relativism. It wasn't a prominent topic in philosophers until the 20th century. It had ancient origins before that, however. In the classical Greek world, both the historian Herodotus and the sophist Pythagoras appeared to endorse some form of relativism. The later attracted the attention of Plato and Theaetetus. It should be noted that an ancient Chinese Taoist philosopher, Zhangji, put forward a non-objectivist view that's sometimes interpreted as a kind of relativism. Alright, you know what? Fair, Boneworm? That's entirely fair. So, the moral relativism moves forward along the ideas that, blah, 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 blah. Its forms and arguments. The term relativism refers to many different ideas. For example, in anthropology, it sometimes connotes, among other things, the rather uncontroversial notion that anthropologists should strive to be impartial and unprejudiced in their empirical inquiries. However, in moral philosophy, relativism is usually taken to suggest an empirical, meta-ethical, or a normative position. The empirical position is usually descriptive moral relativism. As a matter of empirical fact, there are deep and widespread moral disagreements across societies, and these disagreements are much more significant than whatever agreements there may be. Love the stream shed one grain of sand. Yes. That was really good. Who did that tweet? Pikachu? Some Pikachu Tumblr. I thought that was really good. Was it a tweet or a Tumblr? I don't remember. But thank you for the follow, Boneworm. Sometimes what is emphasized is a moral diversity rather than a strict disagreement. So, for example, just because we have different morals doesn't necessarily mean one of us is right and one of us is wrong. Whereas moral realist is, no. Some things are 100% right, and some things are 100% wrong, right? Some claims are truly factual when it comes to morality. Now, funnily enough, this entire article on moral realism doesn't put forward any claims of what is good or what is bad. Again, I'm generally of the argument that for humans, our moral structures are at least based on the idea of morality as cooperation. We have crafted most of our moral consequences and ideas that they would benefit people if everybody played by these rules. More people would be happy if everybody followed the same rule book, right? Moral relativists are pretty similar. Again, these two arguments are fairly, I don't want to say mundane, because there's a lot of talking about them. But for the most part, the actual part, moral realism, moral relativism, are meta-ethics, not ethics, right? They're not going to say, this is good or this is bad, but more an idea of how we can decide what is good and bad. If you want a more specific ethical, let's take a look at what my good friend Bladed Iris wanted me to talk about a little bit. Nietzsche. Nietzsche's moral philosophy is primarily critical in its orientation. He attacks morality both for its commitment to an untenable descriptive claims about human agency, as well as for the deleterious impact of its distinctive norms and values on the flourishing of the highest types of human beings. Essentially, Nietzsche believes that some people are so good, so different and special, that forcing them to conform down to the lowest common denominator is harmful. And it is more harmful than the benefits we gain from lifting everybody up to that lowest common denominator. You know, you're right. Exactly. He actually had some really cool ideas. I'm not saying everything you should throw out, everything he wrote about you should throw out. Definitely not. Naichi is not everything he believes in, I think, is correct, but there's some really cool stuff in particular. So, yeah, blood for the blood god, exactly. Morality in the prerogative sense is he's not a critic of all morality. He explicitly embraces, for the example, of the idea of higher morality. Yeah, exactly. Which would inform the lives of the higher men. He believes that these moral ideas should apply to the people that would best benefit their application. He does not confine his criticisms to one religious philosophy, sociologically or histologically circumcised example. Thus, will not sufficient to say that he simply attacks Christian or Kantian or European utilitarian morality. Yeah, Diogenes was literally a cynic. Thus, it will not suffice to say that he simply, blah, blah, blah. He certainly has attacked them. To do justice to the scope of his critique, we should ask what characterizes morality in Nietzsche's prerogative sense. Hereafter, morality as a pejorative sense. MPS. They should stop DCing streamers. I mean, kind of. Yes, live as a sufferer, survive is to find some meaning in the suffering. Please don't DSA in my stream, Metallica. Shut up. You shut up about Metallica and DMCA. I will not have it. I will not have it in my stream. No one mentions the name Metallica around me. Not without being laughed at. Okay. You're right. There's only one Christian who died on the cross. So let's go through some of his arguments against MPS. He, for example, is human agents possess a will capable of free choice. No. I don't hate Metallica. I love their music. I hate what Metallica did to copyright and music laws. Alright, actually, you know what? Non sequitur time. We're going on a trip. Metallica and copyright. Alright. Time for a history lesson, fuckboys. So, Metallica versus Napster was a 2000 district court for the Northern District of California case, focused on copyright infringement and racketeering and unlawful use of digital audio interface. Metallica versus Napster was the first case that involved an artist suing a peer-to-peer file-sharing company. Now, Lars Ulrich, you're right, the guy himself, read a testimony before the Senate Judiciary Committee accusing Napster of copyright infringement. He explained that year, Metallica discovered a demo of I Disappear, a song set to be released in the Mission Impossible 2 soundtrack, was being played on the radio. Metallica traced the leak to a file on Napster's peer-to-peer file-sharing network, where the band's entire catalog was available for free download. Metallica argued that Napster was enabling users to exchange copyrighted MP3 files. Metallica sought a minimum of 10 million damages at a rate of 100,000 per illegally downloaded song. If those numbers sound really big to you, those numbers are really big for like no reason. Metallica hired NetPD, an online consulting firm, to monitor Napster's service. NetPD produced a list of a bunch of Napster while sharing the songs. A 60,000-page list was delivered to Napster's office. eBay versus Bidder's Edge did a term paper on it. Oh, yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that. Let me make a note of that right now, actually. All right. eBay versus Bidder's Edge. You're right. But this is still pretty bad, and I'll explain why as we go forward. So the lawsuit also named several universities held accountable for allowing the students to download them on the universities. And essentially, the district court's ruling over the case issued a preliminary injunction favoring pending the case's resolution. The injunction was subsequently identical to one ordered in the AMM case, ordered Napster to place a filter in the program with 72 hours or be shut down. It was forced to search the system with all copyrighted Metallica. Other artists subsequently filed their own lawsuits, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is essentially allowed other people from in the future to claim that a song being shared or played by somebody else violated copyright law. This was that case. Like, you know, you or I could straight up right now go and download the entire Metallica discography for nothing. We'll just do it. We can just do it whenever. Sure, we might want to use a VPN if we want to, but we don't really need to. But you're right. This and the DMCA are essentially what started the entire idea of online music being not allowed. It's a mess. Okay, what was I doing? I was doing Nietzsche, not Metallica. Okay, why did I talk about Metallica? Why the hell did I talk about Metallica? Whatever. Going back to this. Human agents possess a will capable of free choice is the first statement. This is what Nietzsche relies upon for his intelligible application of human agents on 3 descriptive theses about human agency. Oh, hello there, Pepsikai. Human agents possess a free will capable of free choice. The free will thesis. Oh, thank you for the follow as well. The self is sufficiently transparent the self is sufficiently transparent that agents' actions can be distinguished on the basis of their respective motives. For example, if you take an action, I can look at you and understand roughly why you took that action. I saw you eat that bread, thus I understood that you were likely hungry or likely wanted to enjoy the flavor of that bread. God is dead and NordVPN has killed him. This NordVPN ad is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends, the shittiest mobile game in existence. That's probably a lie. There's probably worse ones out there, but it's bad because it's deceptive practices for marketing. Following, human agents are sufficiently similar that one moral code is appropriate for all because everybody has similar interests. Meaning that people are similar enough together that we can judge morality close to a realistic degree. Where he believed that we can understand that everyone's moral code is applicable to everybody else. You too can kill God from anywhere in the world. I killed God from Rome in my home in America. Alright. So, following the theses, they must be true in order for the normative judgment of MPS to be intelligible, because the normative judgment of MPS are marked for Nietzsche by 3 corresponding traits. Oh, and thank you for the subscription as well, Pepsikai. Some just maybe humans don't make sense for a long space. Not necessarily. Now, we're going to get into a part here where we're talking about the idea of determinism and the idea that people take actions based on a desire. People always want something. Meant to come off from you more often. It's okay. I appreciate you stopping by now. You guys hear me talk about Nietzsche. Humans are freaking stupid, but that doesn't prevent them from having stupid desires. Dumb reasons are... Exactly, Quizbit. Dumb reasons are still reasons. So let's go forward to Nietzsche's 3 corresponding traits, namely that MPS, or the morality in a pejorative sense, is that they hold agents responsible for their own actions. They evaluate and rank the motives for which agents act, meaning like, this person is giving food to the homeless because he wants to help the homeless, and this person is giving food to the homeless because he's recording it for a YouTube video later, is a different decision. We're getting close to our deontological ethics again, right? Where the reason and the motive is more important than the outcome. And then 3 for Nietzsche. Presumably, that morality has a universal applicability. MPS says stubbornly and inexorably, I am morality itself, and nothing besides is morality. Thus, the falsity of the picture of human beings would affect the intelligibility of moral judgments in the following ways. 1. If agents lacked free will, they could not be held responsible for their actions. 2. If motives could not be distinguished, then no evaluative distinction could be drawn among the acts in terms of their motives. And 3. If humans were in fact different in some overlooked but relevant aspect, then it would at least not be prima facie apparent that one morality should have universal application. It is the burden, then, of Nietzsche's critique of the descriptive component of MPS to show that, in fact, none of these later theses about the nature of agency hold. You coward. Don't you advertise me? I'm a loser. They shouldn't listen to me. But thank you, Blade, for trying to take care of my stream. Okay. So, these are the MPS that are held forward. And then these are the critiques against them. And in reality, they're humans. Reality is created in your mind. Experience. Yeah. Experience the world interpreting it. One can never see another. Yeah. Evangelion Genesis Neon or Eon is a good show. All right. Yeah. No. Sorry, Bepsi. And I do thank you again for the follow. So, in his critique against this, and God is in heaven, all good is with the world. It is the burden of him to show that none of these later theses about nature agency hold. Against the free will thesis, Nietzsche argues that both the modern attempts to vindicate free will and moral responsibility, he argues against both the modern attempts to vindicate free will and against moral responsibility. Oh, it's just getting bastardized worse and worse, isn't it? All right. So, on libertarian views, a free agent, that is, one sufficiently free to be morally responsible, would have to be causa sui, i.e., self-centered or for the self. It is trying to cause itself. But since we do not cause ourselves, no one can be a free agent. Nietzsche often takes for granted, not implausibly, that our moral and religious traditions are incompatibilist at their core. Oh no, don't summon Cthulhu. I was actually talking, Quizlet, I actually own a t-shirt that has that written on it, except the God is Dead Nietzsche is written on the front, and the Nietzsche is Dead God is written on the back. So if I'm wearing another shirt over it or a jacket and I have the shirt open, I just look like a pretentious asshole. If people can't read the back, they don't get the joke. It also, of course, had the date of when he said it and the date he died. But yes. So, again, Nietzsche is not arguing or taking for granted that our moral and religious traditions are incompatibilist. Causality, or causally determined wills, are not free wills. Meaning, because God has a plan for us, we cannot have free will. Right? That's his argument. The fonts would be crazy. You can read it upside down. Alright. Nietzsche also argues against compatibilist views of free will and moral responsibility, according to which, 1, we are free and morally responsible as long as we do what we desire, or we identify with the desires on which we act. Or, 2, we are free and morally responsible as long as we are responsive to relevant reasons for acting. In 2011, Rutherford suggests Nietzsche has more in common with the Stoics and Spinoza when it comes to free will. Free actions are just ones arising from a real inner nature, but we cannot choose to be the type of person whose actions arise from the real nature, since that too is a matter of fate. Deus est kill. Oh no. Oh, this is awful. My ears, brain matter leaking out of them. Oh. Alright. Nietzsche offers two kinds of arguments to show that we are not causa sui. Listen, we only talk about God or religion on my stream. I was pretty far down this entire argument of how God is not real if evil exists in the world. But we're moving on from that for a minute. And, so, Nietzsche is arguing that it's impossible to cause this way, that human beings are not self-caused in a sense sufficient to underwrite ascriptions of moral responsibility. I owed the point there are two different arguments issue here to Eric Voldstein. He says relatively little about the first point. No, I cannot speak Runic, unfortunately. It's never a language I picked up. I could run through Google Translate if you want, though. I do actually have a bag of runes in my closet, though, and a book on how to read them. I just had it as like a child, and I never got through it. It's a bag full of rocks that have like carved runes into them, and they're all painted like the runes are black, the rocks are white. And then it's a book of how to read runes, and then also how to fortune tell by throwing them. It's actually kind of cool, but I didn't read it as a kid, so I don't actually know what's in it. I just have it. My families are kind of like hoarders. We just have random crap like that lying around. All right, where was I? Relatively with the first point, other than claiming the concept of a self-caused individual is absurd, and that it is the best self-contradiction that's been conceived so far, a sort of rape and perversion of logic. I can't speak Japanese either. Watashi wa shinenzo. This one is Watashi's favorite. Did you know that Keikaku is Japanese for sword? Alright, I'll stop shitposting and start reading. God isn't real regardless of the existence of evil. Listen, we can't just start right at the core of the matter. We have to wiggle our way in like a knife sliding between the rib cage of God. Alright, this metaphor just got way more metal, but I like it. So, Nietzsche moves quickly from the claim that being kasusui, or self-caused, involves contradiction. However, to an argument that depends on his picture of human agency, Nietzsche accepts what we may call a doctrine of types, according to which each person has a fixed psychophysical constitution which defines him as a particular type of human. God isn't real and he was the boss of every JRPG I played. Oh no. Kill capitalism, kill God. Oh no. The Illuminati. Okay. So, the type facts. I almost killed someone because I made this assumption. Oh no. I actually don't know what John 10:33 is. Let me look it up. We're not stoning you for any good work, but for blasphemy because you are a mere man claimed to be God. You're telling me you have killed people who claim to be God? Alright, what do we got? So, yeah, Nietzsche's big deal is that people are who they are inherently. A naturist rather than a nurturalist. Yeah. In Daybreak, again, yeah, here, the Trepancy of the Self-Thesis, every action is unknowable. He writes, the primeval delusion still lives on that one knows, and knows quite precisely in every case, how human action is brought about. I know what I want, what I have done. I am free and responsible for it. I hold others responsible. I can call by its name every moral possibility and every inner motion which precedes action. You may act as you will. In this manner, I understand myself and understand you all. That is how almost everyone still thinks. But actions are never what they appear to be. We've expended so much labor on learning that external things are not as they appear to be. Appear to us to be. Very well. The case is the same with the inner world. Moral actions are in reality something other than that. More we cannot say, and all actions are essentially unknown. So, yeah. I don't need proof God doesn't exist. He doesn't believe me. Yeah. So yeah, Naichi's got a lot of writing. As you can see, there's a lot. Yeah. Yeah. That's the teapot. Okay. Let me actually pull up. We're gonna talk about. Actually, we're gonna go back to what Blade's suggestion was actually, and let's read some more about Jensen. Shit. Browse table of contents. J. They don't have a page on him here? Ah, crap. I gotta read his actual book? Oh, this is gonna be a pain in the ass. Alright, good night, Smith. Brain is max full capacity. Not Jesuits. Google, why? That code rollback. Stop posting memes and pinging you in the middle of the stream. Yeah. They don't actually have a thing on the whole book, but we can read the book. The Gutenberg Library, I believe, has it in ebook form. We can go through some of it. I think Chris Dawson. Okay. Oh. Yeah, I don't think I can read this book. It's in German. I don't speak German. Not yet. Okay, alright. We're gonna drop this for now. We're gonna go to concept of evil was a fun topic. Ooh, you know what's a really fun concept, actually? Altruism. Altruism's a really fun topic. Where is it? Altruism. Please don't wake her up. We're not going to read that book. I don't want to have somebody on your end of the stream read my screen to tell me what it says. I'll just find the English translation later. Alright, so. Altruism, I think, is an awesome and very interesting concept. Because it's a very good reason. Now, that's going to sound weird, but let's talk about it for a second. Let's go through this article. Behavior is normally described as altruistic when it's motivated by a desire to benefit someone other than oneself for that person's sake. The term is used as a contrary of self-interested or selfish or egoistic. Termites that have guns for heads. Excuse me? Okay, I'm just going to move on. Boneworm. I'm just going to ignore that and move on and, like, bleach my brain of that info. These words are applied to behavior that's motivated solely by the desire to benefit one's self. Malicious designates even greater contrast. It applies to behavior that expresses a desire to harm others simply for the sake of harming them. The pistol shrimp. Pistol shrimp are beastly. I love pistol shrimp. Sometimes, however, the word is used more broadly to refer to behavior that benefits others regardless of its motive. Altruism is based, in this broad sense, might be attributed to certain kinds of non-human animals. Mother bears, for example, who protect their cubs from attack, and in doing so, put their own lives in danger. So used, there is no implication that such adult bears act for the sake of their young. This essay will discuss altruism in a former sense, as a behavior undertaken deliberately to help someone other than the agent for the individual's sake. There's a large and growing empirical literature on altruism, which asks whether or not there is an evolutionary or biological basis for human altruism. Exactly. And and whether non-human species exhibit something similar to it. These issues are addressed by the entries in Empirical Approach to Altruism and Biological Altruism. Okay. So, what is altruism? Before we go any further, oh, yeah. Okay, I thought you meant like an anime or something. For some reason, I just couldn't help but think of Terraform Mars, and then I hated myself because I thought of Terraform Mars. Fontanella gun. Alright, I'll need to look that up later. That sounds interesting. Altruism and GTA are a bunch of bullshit. Okay, let's go through this and figure out where altruism comes from. So, altruistic acts include not only those undertaken in order to do good to others, but also those undertaken to avoid or prevent harm to them. Suppose, for example, someone drives her car extra cautiously because she sees that she is in an area where children are playing, and she wants to ensure that she injures no one. It would be appropriate to say that her caution is altruistically motivated. She is not trying to make these children better off, but she is being careful not to make them worse off. She does this because she generally cares for their own sake. Now, the other thing is, she may be purely doing this out of her own self-interest. I do not want to go to jail for hitting a child with a car, for example, right? If that makes sense. But, furthermore, an important statement of altruism here is that altruistic acts do not need to involve self-sacrifice. They remain altruistic even when they are performed from a mixture of motives, some of which are self-interested. The driver in the preceding Indianapolis may have plenty of time to go where she's going. Slowing down and paying extension may not be contrary to her own good. Even so, her acts count as altruistic if one of her motives for being cautious is her concern for the children for their sake. She may also be aware that if she injures a child, she could be punished, and she, of course, does not want. She wants to avoid for self-interested breeding. So her caution is both altruistic and self-interested. It's not motivated by only one kind of reason. If someone performs an act entirely from altruistic motives, if, that is, self-interested motives were entirely absent, we can describe this as a case of pure altruism. We should be careful to distinguish purely altruistic behavior from self-sacrificing behavior. The former involves no gain for oneself, whereas the later involves some loss. For example, driving to the next area, hate this. But the action of slowing down in the first, at least in some part, is for the motive to not hit those children, right? The other things, again, might be because she doesn't want to go to prison, or because she might know there's a cop around, doesn't want to get caught cheating, or whatever, right? But Chris, that's the fun here. You're right, you wouldn't hit the gas. The thing is Chris, there are some people who would. There straight up are some people who do not care. And they might have a reason for not caring. They might have a reason to care and choose to not do it. Alright. But, for example, in our concept of pure altruism versus self-sacrifice, if someone has a theater ticket and that they cannot use because he is ill, and then he calls the box office so the ticket can be used by someone else, right? You're at home, you can't go to the theater, you know the show's tonight, so you call up the box office and say, hey, let the next person who tries to buy a ticket use mine. I don't mind. There are reasons for speeding, Chris. They might not be good reasons, but they are reasons. You might be late for work. You might be very certain that you're a good driver, and you know that you won't hit anybody. Right? Yeah, exactly. The case in this case, it is altruism, but it's not self-sacrificing altruism. Now, there are some self-sacrificing altruism, but for the case of this argument, consider someone whose deliberations and choices are always guided by this principle. I shall never do anything unless doing so is best for me. Such an individual is refusing ever to sacrifice his well-being, even to the slightest degree. But the thing is I know I will be late for work if I speed. I don't know I will hit a child if I speed. In fact, I'm fairly certain I will not. So I can make a educated decision to speed anyway, right? Don't get me wrong, I don't think it's a good decision, but people still make it, right? Now, going along the lines of this person who will never ever do anything that hurts themselves. But in the view of the terminological points you just made, he could have some altruistic motives for what he does, or even for all he does. On a given occasion, Dragon Diogenes, yes, that's me. On an occasion, he could have mixed motives. He is always careful to do what's best for himself. That allows him to be motivated by the perception that what he does is also good for others. I love nuts. Cashews are my favorite, but like, that's only because pistachios are hard to eat. I love pistachios, but they're a pain, so I don't. It would be odd or misleading to say that such an individual, of this purely self-serving person, is an altruistic person. I like hazelnuts in things, but I don't ever want to just crunch on a hazelnut very often. It's just not really my thing, right? Walnuts are pretty similar. I don't mind walnuts in bread and stuff. But bone worm, who is Steve Jobs? And then I die. Thank you, Quiz, for following up the joke. Okay. So, again, this person who's entirely self-servicing doesn't necessarily... we would not call him altruistic, even if some of the things he takes are at least in some way altruistic. It doesn't make sense if they're entirely self-servicing to do that. Alright, that's a bit much, Chris. Let's tone down the genocide. No. I do agree with you that some people are very, very stupid and should not be allowed out of the house without a leather helmet and a handler. And I think, unfortunately, that number is way higher than people who are currently not allowed out of the house except for a leather and a handler. But, I think it's important still to take a look at why people do things. Alright. So, moral motives and altruistic motives. Some of what we do with an interaction is morally motivated, but not altruistic. Suppose A has borrowed a book from B, and has promised to return it within a week. When A returns the book by the deadline, his motive might be described as moral. He has freely made a promise, and he takes himself to have an obligation to keep such promises. His motive is simply to keep his word. This is not an example of altruism. But, if A gives B a book as a gift, thinking that B will enjoy it and find it useful, he is simply acting out of a desire to benefit B. His motive in this case is altruistic. Similarly, suppose a mother refrains from giving her adult son advice about a certain matter because she thinks it is not her place to do so. It would be interfering too much in his private affairs. Even so, she might also think that he would benefit from receiving her advice. She respects his autonomy, but fears that as a result he will decide badly. Her restraint is morally motivated, but it would not be normally classified as an act of altruism. As the example indicate, the notion of altruism is applicable not to every morally motivated treatment of others, but more narrowly to what is done out of concern for the good of others. In other words, for their well-being. Altruistic acts might be described as charitable or benevolent or kind, for these words also convey the idea of acting for the good of others and not merely rightly towards others, or correctly. Often, the individual who are the targets of altruistic behavior are selected for such treatment because of a personal tie between the benefactor and the beneficiary. If A was extraordinarily kind to B when B was a child, and at a later time, B is in a position to help A out of a difficult situation, the help B gives to A is altruistically motivated, even though their common past explains why it is A B has chosen to help, rather than a stranger in need. Here, it is assumed that A is not promoting A's or B is not promoting A's well-being as a mere means to its own, B's well-being. If that were so, B would not be benefiting A for A's sake, but only for B's sake. A further assumption is that B is not motivated simply by a sense that he owes repayment. Rather, he not only feels indebted to A, but also generally cares about him. The people whom we treat altruistically are often those whom we have a sentimental attachment towards, or are people we feel grateful. But that is not the only possibility. Yeah, B can reciprocate to A, but if A's help is contingent only on reciprocity, it's not altruism. Exactly. Right? Well, so the idea of that statement is like, let's imagine that A, right? A wanted B to help him. So A attempted to help B so that B would feel indebted. That does not make A's choice altruistic. But if over that time B did feel indebted, but also just liked A as a person and wanted to help A, it would be somewhat altruistic still, because you're not just doing it out of the choice to reciprocate. You're also doing it because you want to, right? Yeah, again, Chris, this isn't necessarily to make a change in yourself, but it's simply to be educated on more ideas and hear these from the points of view. It's like, maybe this person is wrong, and you have your own idea of what altruism is. If that's the case, it's awesome to hear this, because it means in the future you're going to be better prepared to handle other people's points of view of altruism. You already have your ideas, and you can engage in more lively debate or conversation. Maybe this won't change you, but it might help to change you later. Right? It's the idea of learning for learning's sake. I like the idea of educating myself because I enjoy learning. Alright, so as noted, altruistic acts are guided by assumptions made by the agent about the well-being of an other individual of group. However, well-being is a disputed matter. It's an uncontroversial that a distinction must be drawn between what constitutes well-being, and 2, what is necessary means towards or a precondition of well-being. You know what? Fair enough. That's entirely your right to do so. Yeah, exactly. Like this isn't necessarily this is how things are and this is how they should be. I think this is just a really cool idea. Boneworm got it exactly right. These are just awesome questions I like to think about in my off time of how would I define this? If I was choosing to define things today as altruistic or not, am I doing things altruistic? I don't think I'll change my choices to do things necessarily, but it'll be cool to me to self-identify and try to figure out what's going on in my own noggin. Okay, so again, let's talk about this example. Let's distinguish between what breakfast cereal consists, or what breakfast is. Cereal, juice, and coffee. And the things you need to have breakfast. Spoons, glasses, and mugs. Well, that's the thing, is some of it is, again, we're in our realist state here. The idea of what is absolutely true, even if we don't know it, versus what can be true. Pretty weird breakfast. Actually, I don't think it's a very weird breakfast combination. So you've got cereal, juice, and coffee. You have a cup of coffee, then you have cereal and juice. Whatever. Right? Now, in order to have these ideas, colors, green ideas, sleep furiously. You need to have spoons, glasses, and mugs. There's no such thing as eating breakfast but not eating anything that breakfast consists of. Like, for example, if your assumption is that breakfast is only ever cereal, then there's no way for you to eat breakfast without cereal, or without spoons, or without a bowl. It's part of your need to eat breakfast. In the same way, well-being, the idea of having goodness, must be sought and fostered by seeking and fostering the good or goods in which well-being consists of. This is a very tautological statement. The idea that because it is good, it needs to be good to be good. Right? Alright, I actually had pizza for breakfast this morning. It was cold pizza out of my fridge. I will eat that one. Your brain injection is just delicious saline solution. Alright. So, the idea here is, if it's good, you gotta work towards having it be good. Rival theories are competing ways of what are its constituents. So, for example, I believe that all good things have X, and you believe that all good things have Y. So, if I try to help you by giving you X, I'm not putting forward your well-being here because you only benefit from having Y. If that makes sense. Right? Well-being admits in degrees. The more one has of goods or goods consist, the better off one is. It would be awkward manner of saying someone, she has well-being. More natural way is, she is faring well. She is well off, she's flourishing, her life is going well for her. The constituents of well-being can also be spoken as benefits or advantages. But when one uses those terms to refer to it, you must be recognized the benefits, advantages, constituents of well-being are not merely instrumental value. They fall in two categories. Ones that are good for someone merely because they foster other goods, and ones that are good for someone that they are constituents of it. Like, for example, are you telling me bacon and eggs is not a breakfast? There is some contested breakfast opinions going on in chat right now. I appreciate that. I can respect your guys' hard sell on the idea of what breakfast contains. How about the first thing you eat in a day, regardless of quantity, style, or time, is your breakfast. You wake up at 2 in the afternoon, you go to work, you go down on your break, and you have a bowl of peanuts. That's your breakfast. And in addition, the last thing you eat is dinner. So if by chance you only eat one meal of the day perfectly at noon, that's not lunch. That is your breakfast dinner. I stand by that. Okay. You're right. I'm just giving it at any time. You're right. It could be at 9 p.m. It could be at 11 a.m. It could be at 3 in the morning. Whatever. It's the point of the first thing you eat after you wake up and the last thing you eat before you go to bed. Also, yeah, rice for breakfast was I had a lot of that. I had a lot of rice for breakfast for a little bit. Alright, you can either type it out in chat or send it to me in the Discord, but I will read it. The other thing I was going to talk about here is they explain a little bit about the well-being issue without as words. So, a distinction between being good at something and having what is good for one's self is one thing to say. Yep, steak in the morning is fairly common. It's one thing to say he is good at acting, and another to say acting is good for him. Philosophers speak of the former as what is called perfectionist value and the later as prudential value. That's because when one tries to be good at something, one hopes to move closer to the ideal of perfection. Prudential value is the kind of good that it would be in someone's interest to obtain. It is another term that belongs to the group we're discussing: well-being, welfare, benefit, or so on. Alright. Feel free to tell me what you want me to read, Bepsi. Alright, It's really loud. Let me turn it down a little bit. No, I'm just gonna get this one. I again, breakfast is really, really based on where you live, right? Like, I lived in Cambodia for a while. My breakfast was rice, pickled vegetables, chopped up bits of ham, right? All right, I got a recommendation. All right, here we go. This is the custom voice line that was redeemed. Blood for the blood god, skulls for the skull throne, milk for the cornflakes. Right? Like that? Alright. Where was I for altruism? Okay, then this is well-being right now. It's based on personal taste. Okay. This is a moral relativism argument you guys are having about, but instead of morality, you're arguing breakfast. You guys are now become breakfast relativists. Although Chris does seem to be a breakfast realist, so we're having to see where this goes. Okay, so altruism here. We're going back to it. So I want to finish this before I end the stream in half an hour. I want to get through a decent amount of this. Okay, so moving on. People do. Okay, I'm not gonna bring this up anymore. Even though perfection's prudential value must be distinguished, it should not be inferred that being good at something is not a constituent of well-being. To return to the example used, if someone has a great talent as an actor and enjoys acting, then every aspect of theatrical life, it's plausible to say that his well-being consists, at least to some extent, in his enjoyment of these activities. Breakfast is grapefruit and nothing else. Breakfast absolutism. Some things are breakfast, and some of those things that are breakfast are true, and some of those things that are breakfast are false. Yeah, like, stop at like a Denny's or something. You'll find steak and eggs in the menu. Okay. So again, this actor, this mental actor, is benefiting from well-being to act in both a perfectionist value and prudential value. What counts as a benefit, though, depends on the correct theory of well-being, but it's widely and plausibly assumed that certain kinds of excellence are components of good life. For example, someone who founds a school that trains children to excel in the arts and sciences, or in sports, simply so they will enjoy exercising such skills, would be regarded as a great public benefactor and philanthropist. Similarly, teachers and parents who foster in their students and children a love of literature and the skills needed to appreciate it would be viewed as altruists. If they are motivated by the thought that by themselves, these activities are benefits the students and children. Okay, that's actually a really good, Bone Worm. That's really good. Yeah, see, I'm a breakfast altruist. The content of the food itself, or not altruist, a breakfast realist. The content of the food itself, it's whatever you eat that matters. Whatever you first eat, that's what matters. Man, who'd have thought our philosophy stream would devolve into this? All because of this line about cereal, juice, and coffee. Here we are, at our final destination. Alright. So let's go back to our concept about altruistic teachers wanting to teach people about literature, right? Take a look at the other angle. For example, imagine a student of literature who cares deeply about James Joyce's Ulysses because he takes it to be one of the greatest, supreme achievements of the human mind. He does not want that novel merely to gather dust in library shelves. It deserves readers who love and understand it. So the skills needed to appreciate it must be kept alive from one generation to another. This kind of devotion to perfectionist value is not a form of altruism, for it's not for the wellness of the people. It's because he values the perfect book in his eyes. Yeah, how many breads have you eaten? That's the real number. Do you keep track of how many people you kill? Alright. For an act to be altruistically modified, it is the benefactor, not the beneficiary, to have certain attitude towards it. A child who acquires from a tennis instructor the skills of a good athlete and a love of the game may simply think tennis as great fun, not as something that benefits him or as a constituent of his life going well. The child does not need to practice this skill because he believes that doing so is good for him. That is a necessary condition of being the beneficiary of an altruistic act. Similarly, someone might deny that the physical suffering counts as something that's bad for him. He should deny this according to the Stoics, but on any plausible theory of well-being, he is wrong about that. Someone who aims to diminish the pain of another individual out of a concern for that individual's well-being is acting altruistically. Now, the real contestment here is, does altruism even exist? Now again, there's this doctrine called psychological egoism. That's also a fascinating topic I'd love to get into, but I'm not going to be able to get into it tonight because it's already really late. All human action, according to psychological egoism, we'll give you the summary here. All human action is ultimately motivated by self-interest. The psychological egoist can agree with the idea, endorsed by common sense, that we often seek to benefit others beside ourselves. But he says that when we do so, that is because we regard helping others as a means to our own good. According to the psychological egoist, we do not care about others for their sake. Altruism, in their words, does not exist. I mean, not quite Quizzlebet, but yes, you're right. Yeah. This is a multi-leveled meme. This is a multi-leveled meme. I can't deal with this, Quizlet. This is too much for me. My meme brain is too smooth. I don't get it. I know it's about the guy with the goat, so like I get that part. We're not talking about animal consent. You're right. Okay, moving forward. Blah 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 blah. Okay, so if we remember my example of the guy really wanting to kill another person but needing his help to do a farm, not killing him isn't altruistic, right? That's the argument essentially here. All right, so since we distinguish several different ways using the term altruism, it helps to make some distinction between different varieties of psychological egoism. Recall that an act is altruistic in the weak sense if it is motivated at least in part by the fact that it benefits someone else, or the fact it will not injure anyone else. Psychological egoism is defined in the preceding paragraph, usually denies that altruism in this sense exists. It is the strongest form of the doctrine. It's usually what philosophers mind when they discuss psychological egoism. Oh no. Oh no. I'm just gonna not read any of that and pretend it didn't happen. Alright. Okay. So, let's move a little bit ahead. So, an empirical argument for psychological egoism. Some might arrive at one or another of these forms of psychology because she takes herself to be a keen observer of the human scene, and her acquaintance with other people has convinced her this is how they are motivated. But that way of justifying psychological egoism is a serious weakness. Others can say to this psychological egoist, perhaps the people you know are like this, but my experience of the world is rather different from yours. I know many people who try to benefit others for their sake. I myself act altruistically, so at most, your theory only applies to the people in your social world. The psychological egoist can respond to this criticism in either of two ways. First, she might claim this doctrine is supported by experimental evidence. That is, she might believe that I, the subjects studied by psychologists in carefully conducted experiments, have been shown to not be purely altruistic, or more strongly, that they ultimately care only about their own good. Or, two, they can infer from these experiments that all human beings are motivated the same way. This is the disputed matter. There's experimental evidence that casts doubt on psychological egoism in its strong and weaker form, but the controversy continues 2011 and 2010. You can read more about it if you'd like. It's very interesting. Now, a second response to the poem's like consists of a priori philosophical argument for one version of that doctrine. According to this line of thinking, we can see, quote-unquote, from the armchair, that is, without seeking any empirical confirmation, that psychological egoism must be true. You shut up about your Japanese pun, Quizzlebet. Man, I'm tired. I'm tired. Okay. So, let's talk about... We get back to Plato. Yay! This is the part I want to get to because this is very interesting. Okay, so... Drawing some ideas that can be found in Plato's dialogues, we might affirm to two premises. One, what motivates us to act is always a desire. Because it's almost midnight for me and I woke up very, very early. And two, all desires are to be understood on the model of hunger. So the case here is the motivators to act being always a desire, of course, as we know, is just challenged by Nietzsche, but we're going to ignore that for now. This is back to Plato. He says, every time we act, it's because we want to. We want something. And all of our desires can be understood using hunger as a model for them. To elaborate on the idea of two, when we are hungry, our hunger has an object, something we want. Food, or perhaps some particular kind of food. But we do not want to ingest the food for its own sake. What we are really after is the feeling of satisfaction that we expect to get as a result of eating. Ingesting this or that piece of food is something we want, but only as a means to achieving a sense of satisfaction or satiation. Right? We want to eat it. We want to not be hungry, but there's only this type of bread I don't like. So I'm going to eat it anyway because I don't want to be hungry. My desire is greater to satisfy my hunger is greater than my inclination to not eat the thing. Now, if all desire is understood in the same way, and we know that all motivation is a form of desire, then we can infer that psychological egoism in its strong form is true. And therefore, weaker versions are also true. Consider an action that on the surface appears to be altruistically motivated. I give you a gift simply because I think you will like it. Now, since I want to give you this gift, and all desire should be understood as a kind of hunger, I am hungering after you feeling pleased. I hunger after a piece of food, but not as one wants to ingest a piece of food for its own sake. I do not want you to feel pleased for your sake. Rather, what I am seeking is the feeling of satisfaction I will get when you are pleased. And your being pleased is simply a means to which I achieve satisfaction. Accordingly, we don't have to be keen observers of other people or look within ourselves to arrive at psychological egoism. We can recognize this doctrine is correct simply by thinking about the nature of motivation and desire. Now, this is of course if we take Plato's argument about, first, what motivates us to act is always desire, and second, all desires are to be understood in the model of hunger. The essay goes on to talk about this a little bit. As we get down through it, it talks about the ideas of these motivations being hungers, etc. Yeah, right? Pretty much. Listen, we're not talking about... Okay. So, Boneworm, rather than that, it's like, for example, again, like I said, if I give you a gift, it's not because I want you to have the gift and be happy having it. I want to feel good about giving you a gift, right? And I will only feel good about giving you a gift if that gift arrives in your hands and you appear to be happy by it, right? I don't care about you actually having the gift. My true hunger is for the feeling of desire, or the feeling of satisfaction of you appearing happy after receiving the gift will give me. Right? I don't actually want you to own Two Worlds Gold Edition, but I will buy you Two Worlds Gold Edition because I hate you. Right, Blade? Yeah, the feeling of gratitude as well might be another hunger. Yeah, so these are things. Again, it's worth observing that the first premise of the argument is open to question. Exactly, right? Like, as long as I don't see you throw in the trash, it doesn't hurt my satisfaction about giving it to you, right? If you don't look pleased, I will eat you. Yes, indeed. Okay, so the argument we can make against this is, of course, what we have is a good understanding of what a desire is. If a desire is simply identified with whatever internal state moves someone to act, then the claim, what motivates us to act is a desire, when spelled out morphology, is a tautology. It says the internal state that moves us to act is always the internal state that moves us to act. That is not a substantive insight into human philosophy, psychology, but a statement of identity. The form of A equals A. Right? We might have thought we were learning something, but cause is being told. It motivates people to desire simply as saying, what I want to do is what I want to do. Yeah, right? Exactly. It doesn't matter if you actually receive the gift or someone else steals it. As long as I feel the satisfaction of giving you a gift, and as long as you never let me know otherwise, it's all good. Now, the attack on this is, of course, actually fairly interesting. Again, the desire and want are often used very, very similarly. What I desire, what I want, etc. As the words, it makes good sense to say, I don't want this, but I think I ought to. That is a statement that we make when we face an unpleasant duty or obligation. When you face a challenge we expect to be difficult or stressful. In these sorts of situations, we do not hunger after the goal we move towards, so the word desire is often used. It is simply false that what motivates the act is always desire. So, a psychological egoist who seeks an a priori defense this doctrine might say, when I claim that what motivates us to act is always desire, I'm not using the word desire as it's sometimes used. My usage is much broader. Among desires in this broad sense, I include the belief that one ought to do something. In fact, it includes my internal state that causes someone to act. Alright, well, have a good one, Pepsikai. Yeah, exactly. Donating money is going to look good on my expense account. That's a perfect way to do it. But also not really. It's more along the lines of, I really want to feel good about myself, so I'm going to give money to the poor because I know if I give money to the poor, I will feel good. Right? I don't actually care about the poor having more money. I just know it feels good to donate. That's how a lot of nonprofits get off the ground, doing things like PETA, or, for example, one that I really hate is the Breast Cancer Association. The pink ribbon is a scam. But people feel good about when you donate. When you stop by that SPCA shelter or whatever little box at the end of a grocery line that's like put $1 in because there's a sad picture of a dog on it, you're donating it because you want to feel good about that dog being happy, right? That dog getting food or getting a home or whatever. The argument here is that no matter how much you quote-unquote lie to yourself, essentially the argument of psychological egoism is saying you are lying to yourself if you say you have a different reason for doing it. Yeah, that one is. Yeah. Okay. What else do we talk about? The comments and the terms used to explain why we help others not refer to our own desires. For example, you are in a public space and come across someone off-putting in appearance who seems to need your help. he appears to be in pain, or confused, or needy in some way. Recognizing this, you take yourself to have a good reason to offer him assistance. You think that you ought to ask him whether you can help, even though that will delay you and may cause you some trouble and discomfort. These ways of describing your motivation are all that is needed to explain why you're offered him help, and is not necessarily to add, I wanted to help him. Admittedly, when desire is used to designate whether it motivates someone, it is true you wanted to help him, but what does the explanatory work in these cases is your recognition of his need and your judgment that, therefore, you ought to offer help. Saying I wanted to help him would be misleading, since it would suggest there was something pleasant that you expected to get by offering your assistance. After you've given him your help, it's true, you might think back on this encounter and be pleased that you have done the right thing, but you might think back, but it might not. You might be worried that what you did has actually made him worse off despite your good intention. All right, Pepsi. I'm going to be ending the stream pretty soon anyway, so have a great rest of your evening. This guy in distress, but he's a goddamn triangle. Right? Yeah. So, in any case, if you do look back with pleasure at your good deed, it does not follow that feeling good was the goal all along, and that you merely use them as a tool to the end. Right? It would follow only if desire, by its very nature, is a form of hunger. Again, we can deny it again by making desire a desire that we cannot interpret as a form of hunger. For example, the desire of a parent to wish to see that their child is happy and successful after they are dead. Can we explain that in Plato's assumption that all motivations are desires and all desires are hunger? No, I don't think we can. So because of that, I think we're given pretty much a free pass on that. Okay, well, again, this is a long essay. I really like it. I think it's super cool. I'm not going to read the whole thing tonight. I am way too tired. I'm going to end the stream pretty soon, but I feel like I'm gonna. Yes, I'm just gonna cold shoulder Bill Cipher. That is right. The man, the myth, the legend. But yes,